Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. This is the regular board meeting of the East Bay Regional Park District Board of Directors. Today is June 1st, 2021, and it is 1:33. Madam Clerk, can you please take a roll call?
Yes, President Rosario. Director Eccles?
Present.
Director Corbett?
Here.
Director Wieskamp?
Here.
Director Waspy?
Here.
Director Lane?
Here.
Director Coffey?
Present.
President Rosario?
Here.
And then staff, executive staff present, General Manager Landsreth, Deputy General Manager Alvarez, District Counsel Victor, CFO AGM Deborah Ocker, Chief Chiobaro, AGM Kelchner, AGMs Johnson and O'Connor, and Government Affairs Eric Fuller.
Excellent.
Mhm.
And I'm going to ask Director Waspy if he could lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance
Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
For which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation
under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty and justice
for
for
all. Someday. Thank you. And also, I would like to acknowledge an Indigenous tribe in my ward. In Ward 2, just over the hill is Lafayette, Moraga, and Rinda. And I just wanted to acknowledge the Saklan tribe. They were the first stewards of the land and had gained quite the reputation for being resistant to the Spanish and mission systems until they were either succumbed to mission systems or actually pushed out of their territory. And I just wanted to acknowledge that they were the first stewards. They survived. They are still here, and they're still relevant today. And I just wanted to thank the Saklan people for being and for being here even today. So thank you. Today's regular meeting is held in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order allowing for board members to participate remotely. And we are also providing live audio and video streaming and have provided the public the opportunity to submit written comments and calling for public comments or as an item on the staff report, and to call in and leave a message as well. So public comments may be submitted one of three ways. And Madam Clerk, can you please explain how the public can participate?
Yes, President Rosario. The public can participate via email by sending one to myself, yburial@ebparks.org. They can leave a voicemail at 510-544-2016. We can transcribe those minutes or that message and give that to the board, or they can simply join by coming into the meeting. And I see we have a couple of people that have already done so. And just as a new direction going forward, starting with the June 15th meeting, the public comments that we have received, the board of directors and all members of our executive team do receive copies of these emails, letters, and transcribed voice messages the night before the meeting. If you send them during the day, which I have received, they may not get those until after the board meeting. At the next board meeting of June 15th and going forward, the public comments received will not be read at the meeting because the board does in fact receive them. These correspondences have and will continue to be included in the final copy of the filed board packet for that meeting. You may still call in and make your public comments as indicated on the agenda. So thank you, Director Rosario.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Mhm.
Okay. Hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to look at the agenda. A motion is in order.
So move.
Moved by Director Wieskamp. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Eccles. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please take the roll call.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Corbett,
Aye.
and President Rosario.
Aye,
The agenda has been unanimously approved.
thank you. And Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Yes, Madam, yes. Yes. Well, yes, President Rosario, we do. And I'm going to read briefly a letter that we received from Kathy Gleason. And she's the co-founder of the Concord Naval Weapons Station Neighborhood Alliance. And on this particular email, she's speaking of cats. And she says, I have concern about the recent news regarding shooting cats and other wildlife in East Bay Regional Parks. I hope the district and animal advocates can reach a humane solution on this issue. I am very involved in animal rescue, and I feel the majority of local residents would not support shooting cats or wildlife. And then we also received several emails on the mountain biking issue. And I am simply going to, because they're pretty much all the same, the emails are saying that they would like to have equitable access to trails. Some people are concerned that they are not allowed to ride their e-bikes. Also would like to have access to single track trails. And everyone says that they love our parks. I'm going to read this email, and then we do have one speaker, Mr. Schrock, on that on this topic. But the emails that were received came from Roger Seraphin, Michael Solis, Andy Peterson, Charles Greenwood, Alan Enrisi, Mike Utko, Jeff Baxter, Juan Libomfacil, Jeremy Nuger, Josh Church, Maddie Terzola, Eunice Noel Wagner, Daniel Vandenberg, Marcelo Q. Denise Prescott, Tanya Henderson, and Dara Rickman. And those are our public comments, along with our one public speaker. Mr. Schrock, I see you. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Heard on. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Joel Schrock, and I'm here to follow up on the comments from the last meeting. I think we can all agree that the current policy towards cyclists in our parks isn't working. Bootleg trails are popping up in all of the parks. User conflicts with cyclists on multi-use trails continue to pour in. Users continue to ride in, pleading for better access for bikes, but instead of expanding access by creating a trail network to help guide the flow of cyclists, the board has chosen increased enforcement to continue to drive cyclists away from the parks that serve them. It was sobering to hear Director Corbett come on after break at the last meeting imply that in order to grant better access to bikes, she would need to stop thinking about all park users when making decisions. These statements just show that the cyclists are still not considered a legitimate user group that's deserving of fair trail access. The sentiment runs so deep that cycling isn't even listed on the activities section for Briones Park. The website reads, Briones is an ideal park for hiking, running, or horseback riding over the park's scenic trails, picnicking, bird watching, and similar activities. This is such a shame because on any given day, more visitors show up on bikes than they do on horses. To further illustrate how out of balance trail access is in our parks, I'd like to share some data points. D. Rosario recently stated that 90% of the visitors to Redwood Regional Parks are there to hike or run. Now let me share some data about cycling. The Sokol Demonstration Forest, deep in the Santa Cruz Mountains, has a trail system that provides open access to cyclists. The stewards have installed an infrared beam counter that tracks users. They're getting 600 to 800 detections on the Ridge Trail on weekends. Not all weekend, mind you, that is each day. The total count is 1,200 to 1,600 riders per weekend. This beam counter has logged 10,000 detections in the last 6 months. Here's another data point. The Friends of China Camp State Park report that on weekends, 60% of the users are cyclists that are there to ride the trails. 60%, that's a huge jump from the 10% at Redwoods, and just shows the how unwelcome cyclists feel due to current policy and trail access. Now let's talk about bike sales. I contacted a national bike shop in Berkeley to ask about their sales data. Here's what they shared. For the past 14 months, I pulled a list of bikes we sold, 91 in total, 60 mountain bikes, 17 gravel, and 14 road bikes. If we're considering trail use, given that both mountain and gravel category bikes use our local trail system, it's reasonable to say that 81% of the bikes we sold utilize our local trail network. Please think about that number. 81% of new bike sales are intended to ride on trails. Meanwhile, how much effort is being spent on road cycling infrastructure? The parks have some catching up to do if they are to address the actual number of people that are seeking trail access on bikes. So when I hear that only 10% of park users at Redwoods are on bike, it just shows how out of whack things are in the parks that you oversee. So ladies and gentlemen of the board, it's time to modernize how our parks are run to reflect the current demographic of users they are here to serve. When will cyclists be treated as a legitimate user group that's deserving of fair and equitable access to the trails on our public lands? I hope that time comes soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schrock. Perfect timing. Thank you. Okay, President Rosario, we do not have any more public comments.
Great. I appreciate everyone's comments, whether via email or speaking. And very appreciative of people participating in the regional parks. Let's see. Now we should have item C, General Manager's update on the status of the East Bay Regional Park District.
Mr. President, can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
I'll just make this brief. I think it's really important that people don't mischaracterize what people say, whether they're constituents or whether they're board members. I never said that I'm not listening to all users. What I did say was part of my role is to listen to all users of the parks. Everybody knows that's my philosophy. And so just wanted to make sure Mr. Schrock didn't misinterpret what I said. So thank you for allowing me to straighten the record out. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, we are at item C, General Manager's update.
Great. Thank you, President Rosario and directors. Good afternoon, Sabrina Landreth, the General Manager. I am going to go ahead and turn this over to AGM O'Connor and AGM or Chief Chiburo if they want to chime in, but I just wanted to acknowledge all of our public safety and operations staff for handling a very busy weekend, this last holiday weekend on top of our normal busy weekends. It actually signified the official opening of our swim season, which they can give you a little update on how well that went. So just want to acknowledge all of our hardworking staff for that. And I will turn it over to AGM O'Connor first.
Good afternoon, board members. Jim O'Connor, your Assistant General Manager of Operations. The Chief and I are here to report that things went well this weekend. As you know, it was the opening weekend for swimming in the district, and staff across the district in both operations, public safety, and public affairs, we worked to come up with a solid plan for reopening swimming under COVID restrictions, and it went really, really well. Of course, you always have a few people try to sneak by and things like that, and that was handled appropriately by public safety. But generally, the report out from staff is that things worked well. The reservation system worked. And at the direction of Jim Landreth, we're going to meet this week and see if we can increase our capacities under the new program and accommodate more swimmers district-wide. So we're going to do that this week. Public safety operations and reservations are going to meet, and we're going to take a look, do a little debrief from this weekend, and hopefully we can increase capacities for next weekend. I'll hand it over to the chief if he wants to add anything else to that.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, General Manager. Good afternoon, President Rosario, Board of Directors, Anthony Chiburo, your AGM of Public Safety and your Chief of Police. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. The best way I can describe the weekend in terms of the activity we had is from one of my command officers who said it was like a busy summer weekend. So we did not experience a high load of patrons consistent with the holiday. Nonetheless, it would be equivalent to a busy type of weekend in the summer. As far as our swim facilities go, I had the opportunity to go to Contra Loma and experience the heat in East County, the 100-degree heat. And then I went to Roberts, and certainly staff was doing their best. We are always impressed with our lifeguards. They were functioning well and ensuring for the safety of our patrons, as were our police officers. And I can tell you that there is more room for improvement, and we know that. And we did meet this morning with public safety, and we look forward to meeting with park operations to continue the work.
Director Lane.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that report. I wonder if for our public, you would let us know which lakes or swim areas are not open, because we open some, but not all.
Sure. Yes. Right now we have Temescal is one of the areas that is closed, and that as well as Lake Anza is closed currently. And I think we may have one more. I'm not sure if I missed one in there.
Shadow Cliffs is
Shadow
closed
Cliffs.
also.
Thank you. Shadow Cliffs is closed. Yes. Thank you.
And the reasons for those closures?
That would be water quality issues. That's why those are closed. And Shadow Cliffs, the water is low. We do not have sufficient water in Shadow Cliffs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you for the update. Next is item D, business before the board, consent calendar. Madam Clerk, do we have any questions from the board that you know of?
Well, yes, President Rosario, we did have two questions, and I believe they've been answered. One was from you on the Oak Woodland restoration, item D1J. The other one is on open session. So that's the only one that I have. Did you get that response?
I did, thank you.
Okay, so I don't have any other questions in advance. If board members have any comments on any additional agenda item?
I see Director Corbett.
Mr. Chair, will you be reading item C of the consent calendar, the resolution celebrating the space recognition of June 2021 as LGBTQ Pride Month?
Yes, I was intending to have the board of directors read that resolution.
Okay, great.
Any other items from the board members? Okay, great. Before we take a vote on the consent calendar, I would like to take the privilege of having the board of directors read the resolution item D1C. And I will, let me get to the right place. Okay, then I will start off, and then I will go, we'll go in this direction. We'll go, I'll start off, and then Director Waspy, Lane, then Director Corbett, then Director Coffey, Director Wieskamp, and then Director Eccles. And then we'll cycle around until we run out of whereases and resolves. Thank you. So I would like to begin resolution of the East Bay Regional Park District, recognizing June 2021 as the LGBTQ Pride Month. Whereas the East Bay Regional Park District cherishes the value and dignity of each person and appreciates the importance of equality and freedom, and Director Lane.
That is Director Waspy.
Oh,
Whereas all are welcome in the Park District, and every individual and every family deserves to enjoy the parks knowing they're safe and supported, and
Whereas the Park District denounces prejudice and unfair discrimination based on age, gender identity, gender expression, race, color, religion, marital status, national origins, sexual orientation, or physical attributes as an affront to our fundamental principles. And
Whereas Pride Month began in June 1969 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City, after lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus LGBTQ plus, and allied friends rose up and fought against police harassment and discriminatory laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And
whereas the Park District appreciates the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of the LGBTQ plus community, which strengthen our social welfare. And
Director Wieskamp, go to the next person.
I'll go ahead. Whereas it is imperative that all people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. And
I will start.
Mhm.
Whereas despite being marginalized, LGBTQ plus people continue to celebrate authenticity, acceptance, and love. And
whereas the Board of Directors again reaffirms the East Bay Regional Park District's commitment to promoting equity and removing barriers to access in our parks and programs and in our workplace. And
whereas the East Bay Regional Park District celebrates together with our community and colleagues in honoring the contributions of LGBTQ plus people in our country, our East Bay community, and park district.
now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Directors of the East Bay Regional Park District recognize June 2021 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month.
be it further resolved, the general manager is hereby authorized and directed on behalf of the district and in its name to execute and deliver such documents and to do such acts as may be deemed necessary or appropriate to accomplish the intentions of this resolution.
excellent. Thank you so much. Very proud that we were able to get this done this year, and in support of our LGBTQ plus community and our employees as well. So with that, a motion is in order to approve. I also just, well, on that thought, is that I just wanted to thank Public Affairs, Carol Johnson and Jonathan, for really stepping forward and putting together a flag and pins for the board members. And we're going to get they're temporary, I think, but we'll get better quality next time. But I think I just wanted to thank their extraordinary efforts to get it done for the board meeting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, President Rosario. And if I might, I think you're going to see, here it is, some of the graphics that we're working with to create flags for our parks for this month, as well as a banner masthead change up for our website for this month as well. So lapel pins are on the way for all staff that are interested in having them, and board, of course. So this is just one way that we can show to our visitors that we do care about inclusion in our parks and welcome people of all backgrounds to visit all of the parks.
Great. Thank you so much. So with that, we have a motion is in order to approve the consent calendar.
Move the consent calendar.
I see Director Corbett
second.
and a second, Director Eccles. Madam Clerk, please take a vote.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Wasfy,
Aye.
and President Rosario.
Aye.
We have unanimously approved our agenda.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Our consent calendar.
Excuse me, our consent calendar.
That too.
Director Wieskamp, are you okay?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. My
Okay.
apologies but you just barely missed a beat in reading.
Okay. And now we're at item D2A. This is adopt the name Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50, for the future regional park at the former Concord Naval Weapons Station, Concord Hills Regional Park.
Thank you, Director Rosario, Assistant General Manager Christina Kelchner. And it's fitting that we're here today on the day after Memorial Day to consider naming a park at the site of a former naval base. The recommended name for the future park, Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50, recognizes the service of African-American sailors who served their country, both by serving in the U.S. military during World War II and by standing up to the racially discriminatory policies of the U.S. military at the time. Their courage, along with the advocacy on their behalf, led to the desegregation of the military and changed the course of this country's history. This naming is itself historic, as this would be the first park in Contra Costa County to be named after an African American. And we look forward to partnering with the National Park Service on a future visitor center where this story can be told along with all of the stories of the land, including the stories of the original habitants, the Chukon people. We really appreciate all of the community input. It's been a tremendous amount of engagement and input from our local community, which has been wonderful. And we do hope that the support continues as we continue to work with our partners and our elected officials to raise the funding that's going to be needed to build the park so that these stories can be told. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn this over to the district's Chief of Planning, Brian Holt.
Thank you, Christina. I'm Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails, and GIS. Is everybody able to hear me okay? Very good. I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to jump into the presentation. So good afternoon. We're here to identify a name for the Concord Hills Regional Park. Concord Hills has been a working name for this regional park site that the Park District has been working on for many decades, and particularly Director Beverly Lane, who has been a leader in really trying to protect the open space of the former Concord Naval Weapons Station. But I picked this picture today just because I think it's fitting, because this is largely what the public has seen of this property, is a restricted area with no public access. And as we select a name for this future park, I'm looking forward to continuing to work to make this area accessible to the public so all of its stories can be told. So as Christina mentioned, our recommendation today is that the staff requests that the Board of Directors adopt the name Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. This was a name that came from the community. Staff has fully evaluated it, fully supported and embrace it. We brought this to the executive committee on May 11th, where it received unanimous support. Brought it to our park advisory committee on May 24th, where it also received unanimous support. And we're here today, the Board of Directors. And just, I'll point out the pictures on the side here. On the top, we have a picture of the the sailors at Port Chicago walking out of the pier. And then on the lower left is Thurgood Marshall, who we will get into some of the justification for his naming of the property. And a lot of this information was included in the staff report, which I know the board has the opportunity to review, and if public as well, a lot of the historic background there. And then this young sailor here, Spencer Sykes Sr., just selected his photo, had the pleasure of working with his son, Spencer Sykes Jr., for many years with the Friends of Port Chicago. So very much still, family's still very much a part of this. So where are we? This is the future park site comprises 2,540 acres located on the former inland area of the Concord Naval Weapons Station between the cities of Concord and Pittsburgh. This really forms the green belt between the cities of Concord and Pittsburgh. You'll see to the north there, north of Highway 4 and on the waterfront, is the site of the Port Chicago explosion. And that's a National Park Service site, the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial. It's located within an active Army base, the Military Ocean Terminal Concord. And I would recommend everybody, if you get an opportunity, to take a tour with the National Park Service to that site They do a great interpretive program out there. But unfortunately, the site's not fully accessible to the public because it is within an active Army base. It's often closed down when the Army is active unloading ships out there. And it's difficult for the general public to get to. Also point out the former Port Chicago town site, which is also located north of Highway 4, not within our future park site, located near where the explosion occurred. So I just wanted to give a sense of some of the park features of the future park. The future regional park really provides expansive views of Mount Diablo, the Diablo Valley, the San Francisco San Joaquin Delta. This is obviously a picture taken in greener times. As you're out there today, you would be blessed with the golden hills of the East Bay, but beautiful year round. Includes a real vast network of former Navy infrastructure, abandoned rail lines and roadways that will serve as the base network for planned 22 plus miles of new trails throughout the site. So this will be a highly accessible regional park. And then we have approximately 70 former munition magazines that were developed across the property to serve as munition storage. And these magazines really provide the dominant feature of the landscape, very evocative of the military past throughout the property, and really provide great opportunities for creative reuse and interpretation of the property's history. And then a number of buildings, former naval buildings that were constructed on the property, including this building, a former maintenance building, located within the center of the property that has been planned to house a future visitor center that would be developed in partnership with the National Park Service to highlight the history of the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial, and to also house other stories of the property, the native history, the ranching history, agricultural history. This future visitor center can also provide a spot for community conversation about the history of Port Chicago and its aftermath, and the role that it played in our nation's ongoing struggle for civil rights. There's a number of other buildings across the property as well. Each of those have been identified possibly for repurposing as archive facilities, maintenance and operation facilities, and lots of opportunities for outdoor classrooms and other interpretive facilities to tell the site's full history. So, like I say, there's a lot of history that's included within the staff report, but I also just wanted to walk through some of the land history here, some of the process and how we've gotten here, and just really just a long-term effort to essentially bring this property back into the public realm. So in 1942, the Port Chicago Naval Magazine was originally established, and this originally just included 921 acres. And I want to acknowledge John Keibel with the Concord Historic Society, who we've worked with for many years on this project, and he reached out following one of our recent meetings to correct me on some of our numbers. So thanks to John for historic accuracy here. So the site originally included just 921 acres of the tidal area. That tidal area eventually grew to what it is today, 7,600 acres. But when it was originally established, it was just a transfer depot. So there's no on-site storage. Munitions would come over from all over the US, and train cars would be unloaded quickly onto ships that were at the piers. And that led to a lot of the unsafe working conditions that ultimately led to the explosion in 1944. It was also operated as a segregated facility with African-American sailors who are often assigned to the most dangerous jobs of unloading munitions. So those conditions of the unsafe transfer and the segregated conditions, when the explosion occurred on July 17, 1944, 320 men died, and most of them African-American. 1945, the Navy expanded to the inland area. They did have plans to expand to the inland area prior to the explosion, but the explosion certainly hastened those plans because it was in response to the explosion at Port Chicago and the need to provide for the additional storage for safety throughout that site. And later, this property was renamed the Concord Naval Weapons Station. The inland area closed in 1999, and I know Director Beverly Lane at that time worked closely with the Contra Costa County and City of Concord, Congressman George Miller, to identify some potential reuse of the property. So her history dates back on this property for many decades. In 2005, the inland area officially closed, 5,200 acres. And that's when the tidal area was transferred to the Army and where it currently operates as Military Ocean Terminal Concord. In 2006, the City of Concord initiated the Concord Reuse Project, and that was to evaluate the reuse of the full closed bay 5,200 acre inland area. In 2010, a reuse plan was adopted designating the 2,540 acre new regional park, plus significant new housing and commercial development on the city's portion of the property, the area labeled as EDC, Economic Development Conveyance, that the city continues to work on. In 2010, President Obama established the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial, the first national park established by President Obama. And this legislation authorized the jointly operated East Bay Regional Park District and National Park Service Visitor Center, highlighting the Port Chicago history within the future regional park site. We continue to work for the next decade. In 2019, East Bay Regional Park District accepted possession of the future regional park site. And then in 2020, last year, we were able to adopt the land use plan for that future park site to guide future park development. And I'll go into some details of that land use plan at the close of the presentation. So the naming process. The naming process really began when we began to develop the land use plan for the process, which started in 2015. We solicited names throughout the public land use plan process. This was a series of individual conversations, a number of public workshops. We would solicit suggestions on the future park name. And we had exercises at various Port Chicago commemoration events to identify future names. We circulated a survey of the top names. And it was circulated by the City of Concord, City of Pittsburgh, Save Mount Diablo, and East Bay Regional Park District. And we also allowed for additional names and comments to be offered and open-ended suggestions. We brought the results of that survey to the PAC and Executive Committee in March 2020. There's support for the name Concord Hills to continue that name, but also a lot of interest in either honoring the Native American history of the property or recognizing the Port Chicago and African American history of the property. The PAC and Executive Committee directed staff to engage in conversations with Native peoples about a possible Native affiliated name. And we engaged in those conversations. I do want to recognize Principal Planner Devin Reef, who just did a really great job in conducting outreach with our Native community. And results of those discussions were presented to the Executive Committee in September of 2020. And this is where a lot of public comment and interest really emerged about a name that reflects Port Chicago and African American history, and just the recognition that this site, this is the only site that the story of Port Chicago and the aftermath that it played in our nation's struggle for civil rights. It's the only site that could be told. So throughout 2020 and 2021, we engaged in additional conversations with Native people about the feedback and interests that we had heard, and discussed a number of other opportunities for the Park District and tribal people to partner in other areas throughout the Park District. And this is where we really saw a broad coalition emerge supporting the community recommendation. Thurgood Marshall Regional Park coming to Port Chicago 50. And that's supported by the East County chapter of the NAACP, the Friends of Port Chicago, the Veterans Alliance, and a number of other groups, as well as having been endorsed by the Concord City Council and a number of others that I'm sure we'll hear from. So I want to acknowledge Port Chicago. Some of the comment that we have gotten is, the explosion didn't happen on the regional park site, and Thurgood Marshall didn't necessarily visit the regional park site, and so what is the sort of geographic connection? I explained the need to develop storage facilities. There was a direct historic connection there, but just also a recognition that the history of the Port Chicago explosion is it's a dispersed history. It doesn't exist in one space. The explosion happened on the waterfront. The sailors were then ordered to return to Mare Island, where they received the orders to begin unloading munitions once again. They were tried in an unjust mutiny trial on Treasure Island, where Thurgood Marshall came and observed the trial. And then ultimately, and we can see in the right-hand corner of this picture here, the unknown US sailor, there's a grave of the unknown sailors located within the Golden Gate National Cemetery in Colma. Ultimately, this story leads back to the halls of DC, where it led to the order to desegregate the Navy and ultimately the military. So this is a history that is local, is regional, and is national. So Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. Thurgood Marshall's role is really pivotal in advocating for the Port Chicago 50 when he came to observe the trial. He began to write about it and began to speak to other politicians and to the press about what he saw in the Navy's trial, and really garnered the national attention that ultimately led the Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, to reconsider the convictions and ultimately overturn them, and then issue his own order ordering the desegregation of the military. So Thurgood Marshall is really critical to that effort. And we also heard that it's really important to celebrate a prominent leader, a positive leader, who fought for civil rights for all. And his name, as we've seen, just provides an immediate educational opportunity. People get curious to understand the history more and begin to dive into that history and start to learn just how significant this history is and how little is known about it. And it provides that sort of immediate opportunity to do what a name should do when it is best done, is provide education that highlights important stories of our history. And it's just Thurgood Marshall was so central to the struggle for civil rights in this country, provides opportunities to convey a lot of broader themes of social justice, protest, and resilience, and for an opportunity for deep storytelling of the site's broad history. Going into the home of the Port Chicago 50, this tagline was brought on and discussed and emerged as really important to recognize the bravery of the Port Chicago 50 specifically. I was thinking a lot over this Memorial Day weekend of just, what a brave action that was during the time of Jim Crow and a segregated society, to step up to one of the most powerful institutions in the world to protest an unjust and racist system. They engaged in one of the early acts of organized civil disobedience, calling for safer working conditions. This is a labor story as much as it is a civil rights story. And it's important to know that at the time, Black sailors were bound from the town of Port Chicago. They did not have a home in this community. Many of them left their homes in other places to serve their country, and then were treated in a horrific sort of way for their service. Their protests garnered national attention and ultimately, as we said, led to the desegregation of the military. And then we also just heard a lot of interest in just the significance of the word home to the historically excluded African-American community. This has been a journey for me. And I really want to acknowledge everybody who honestly engaged in this conversation. I, reflect on myself as a white male. I often feel at home in just about every space that I occupy. But that's not necessarily the case for people of color, for the African American community. And the word home really has a powerful meaning to them. And this just could be a place to celebrate African American history. This is not a place to focus on the tragedy of the Port Chicago explosion or simply focus on the lives lost. That's certainly part of the story, but it's also an opportunity to celebrate African American history, celebrate the bravery of the Port Chicago 50, and really tell the positive stories here too. So I have, and I feel it's important to continue to just recognize the Port Chicago 50 are not just, we talk about them as a group, but these were all individuals. These were all men who signed up to serve their country, who wanted to contribute to the effort of World War II. They all had names, they had families, and they continued to live after their trial was concluded and their convictions overturned. So a real opportunity to continue to explore who were these men, who were their families, and what impact did this history have on them and their future and on their communities. So, important to acknowledge them individually. So just also wanted to acknowledge just a lot of opportunity here for broader themes of interpretation and education. Of course, there is the Native American history. There's a history of Rancho Monte del Diablo and the agricultural and ranching history. And this site was a site of protest throughout the Vietnam, Korean, Cold War. And we had somebody from UC Berkeley share with us a number of these posters that he had made during some of those protests. Of course, there was the protest by Brian Wilson where he tragically lost his legs, and that history associated with that. And again, just the historic use of the property, which has been sort of themes of equality, safe working conditions, social justice, resilience, and protest kind of weave through all these histories. So we also want to acknowledge, and I want to thank the Native people that we engaged in conversation with. I mean, they gave generously, willingly of their time. They told us their stories, and we want to acknowledge that there's a lot of opportunities for the district to continue to acknowledge Indigenous history and the ongoing contributions of Native people today. Some of the things that emerge is, we could work to consider cultural easements and joint stewardship opportunities at other sacred sites throughout the Park District. We could work with Native people to continue our practice of formal land acknowledgement to ensure accurate land acknowledgement on our park maps, signage, and interpretive materials. Work with Native people in development of a cultural resource management plan for the East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservation Plan area. That's a plan that we need to develop and that we're looking to kick off here, and we're hoping we can work collaboratively with them. And of course, there's opportunities for future naming opportunities that are currently unnamed parklands. Clayton Ranch, Deer Valley, Vasco Hills, and Boone Canyon. Each opportunities to continue to acknowledge Indigenous history. So, like I said, I want to thank the tribes that engaged in the naming discussion who are listed here, and also mention that the picture here is a picture of the healing pole. It was actually carved from a cedar log that was salvaged from the Port Chicago site. And this exists on the Indian Canyon, Mutsun Band of Costanoan people on their land, and was really carved as a symbol of solidarity just with all marginalized people. So I think a symbol of just the larger struggle that we're all working with here. So look into the future as we move forward. Again, the land use plan was approved in July 2020. So what we're looking to develop here would be 22.7 miles of new trails. So again, a really accessible regional park. Group camping facilities are proposed, picnicking proposed throughout the site. Like I say, a series of outdoor classrooms. And really the land use plan is set up in a way that identify different interpretive nodes throughout the property. So spaces to tell the indigenous history, to tell the military and the Port Chicago history, to tell the natural history and the restoration history that we hope will be going into this site as well. I mentioned the interpretive reuse of the munition magazines and the joint visitor center that we're looking forward to continuing to partner with all of the interested parties who've come forward to continue the momentum to really make that visitor center a reality. And then of course we have real significant natural and cultural resource protection zones identified throughout the property. So again, the visitor center, this is a rendering of that existing building that exists on the property, what this visitor center could look like. Again, this partnership was authorized in 2010 by President Barack Obama. We entered into a cooperative management agreement with the National Park Service in 2015, and that was just recently renewed in 2020. This would serve as the primary park destination, highlighting the sites, highlighting the history of Port Chicago, the explosion and its aftermath. Could provide a facility for community meetings, film showings, and symposiums, just really a space for conversation around this story. And it could also just serve functionally as a boarding area for those who are going to go to the actual Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial, an opportunity to get oriented and access a shuttle to that site. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Again, the staff recommendation is that the board adopt the name Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. And with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Excellent, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Director Wieskamp.
Work is still going on, I can tell. In the write-up, it says, despite years of advocacy by local elected officials and community organizations, the courageous young men of the Port Chicago 50 have never been exonerated. Did anybody go into why that hasn't happened? And is that something we might help in doing?
I'm not necessarily going to go too into detail about why that hasn't happened, but I will acknowledge that we have a new administration. And I do know that in the last year, Congressman DeSaulnier was able to work through and get in House approval of an exoneration. That wasn't approved by the Senate, but what was included is it gave authority to the Secretary of the Navy or the President to exonerate the Port Chicago 50. So that is possible. We're hopeful that in some small way, maybe this will help. And I know the efforts of the Friends of Port Chicago and Reverend Diana McDaniel specifically continue to work on that. And I think we're all hopeful that under this new administration, we may see that.
Well, it certainly seems like it would be an appropriate time when we're doing this, which is certainly significant. And
I could add just a little to that, Ann. What Brian suggested is Congressman DeSaulnier and Congresswoman Lee recently introduced legislation in the Congress to create a commission that would look at historic wrongs committed by the government. And I think the end game to this commission includes exoneration of the 50. But they've designed this to be a vehicle for addressing a broader approach to ill deeds through our history.
Great. Let us hope it happens.
It's a long list. Anyone else before we go to public comments? Director Eccles.
Yeah, well, I want to say how strongly I support this name, and I really want to underscore the point that this was such a significant event, and we know so little about it. You know, as you know, I grew up in this area, went to school in actually junior high and high school in Berkeley in the 1970s, and we learned a lot about civil rights and all of the atrocities in the South, and the terrible violence in Boston when schools were integrated. But we never once heard anything about Port Chicago. And I didn't even learn about Port Chicago until I joined the East Bay Regional Park District last year. And then I began to learn about it. And it's horrifying what happened. And it's horrifying that it's not more broadly known. And so I think it's so important to have this name and this park that we can celebrate the courage of these men to protest, really risk their lives to protest an unjust and racist system, and to also to lift up this story and make it more widely known and to our school children and to adults and everybody else. So I'm just so happy that we are moving forward with this name, and I want to thank everybody who was involved in the process to getting to this great outcome.
Thank you. Director Corbett.
Thank you very much. I agree with everything everybody has said so far, and had a similar experience as Director Eccles growing up in the Bay Area and never having had this history taught to me, which is such an amazing thing, because as you know, the Bay Area is a place that does recognize civil rights, and there's so much advocacy in the communities that we've all grown up in. And the fact that this one story was hidden for so long is just, it's almost unbelievable. Brian, thank you for a wonderful presentation, and also thank you for your presentation at the Executive Committee. I think one of the most moving parts of the presentation is just the listing of the 50 names, and recognizing and seeing those 50 names of individuals who really did not only risk their lives, but probably their future livelihoods and their ability to continue as free people within the Navy. I mean, just think of the pressure that was on them to stand up in this situation, and the lack of thought in asking them to go back to work a few days after they'd lost, over 300 of their colleagues. It's hard to believe. But I think what I'd really like to say is, I think this is a very important moment for the Park District, and this was a beautiful journey that everyone was on in getting to this idea for a naming to be put before the board as it has. And so much important input happened, the continued working relationship and development of relationships with the tribal leaders of the indigenous communities of the Bay Area that the staff so thoughtfully put together, and looking at the potential for future naming and property recognition of those that came before us. And then another turn in the process where we heard from so many people and their thoughts and concern about naming the park to remember the history of the 50 and the work that Thurgood Marshall was so involved in. And it just shows, I think, one of the most important things we have an opportunity to do as a board, and that is listen to all of the individuals who come to us and speak to us and give their thoughts and concern, and try to sort through all of that and come up with the very best of decisions. So I think it's just a very proud day, and I so hope that this will add some fuel to the opportunities to ensure that the 50 brave sailors are exonerated at some time. I'm just very proud to be part of the staff in the Park District for the work that has gone into this. And thank you also to our staff members who are also very strong advocates as well. We appreciate your participation in the process as well. It's a beautiful day. Thank you.
Director Lane.
Yes, I just have one comment now, and I'll have something after public comments, but I do want to give a tribute to the National Park Service for what they have put together in the memorial on the waterfront. And thank Robert Allen for writing, well, Thurgood Marshall for writing some compelling words in pamphlets about the disservice that was done to these sailors. Robert Allen, who wrote the initial book on the mutiny, and John Lawrence, who was a staff person in George Miller's office, who had a great deal to do with encouraging and seeing that this memorial came to be. The memorial itself and the tributes that happen out there often during July is a really inspirational location. And so, of course, you have to go through an active military base to get there, but it's one of the National Historic Sites for the National Park Service in East Bay, in the East Bay. And I hope that people will take advantage of the materials that the National Park Service has put together about the explosion and make the effort to come out and see the memorial. So thank you, Brian, for all of your work on this. And I'm looking forward to public comments.
Director Coffey.
Yeah, Brian, or perhaps someone else on staff. As you know, we've been getting notes from folks with ties to the town of Port Chicago. And I just wanted to confirm what I've been telling them, and that is that we're aware that's a history that is even more deeply buried than the explosion and the aftermath and the 50. There was a mass eviction of the residents of that town in the late 60s by the military. And there's still a lot of hurt out there, as you can tell. But my understanding is that staff is already trying to collect that history, work with the Historical Society, talk to the descendants or people who actually lived there when they were young, and we'll pursue some oral history so that that terribly lost history of the town of Port Chicago itself will be reflected in the museum facets of the visitor center and the programming.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I talked to Kevin Damster in our interpretation department, and I think I saw something this morning about doing some outreach and starting to collect those oral histories and talk to the descendants and yeah, trying to make sure that we're acknowledging that history and continuing to tell that, whether with it in the future visitor center site or elsewhere within the park, but making sure that history isn't lost.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. I guess you're calling on me.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add my voice. Also, I'm very proud that I have the ability to vote in favor of this naming of the regional park of Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. Very proud that we have the ability to do that, and it's an excellent decision.
Excellent. I'll save my piece for after public comments. So, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments? I believe we have a couple.
Yes, President Rosario, we do have several public comments, and we also have received a couple of emails. So all those that are on the line, I do see you. So you don't have to raise your hands or anything. I know who's there for the public comments. I'm going to read just briefly a couple of emails that were sent in. Please note that I may not read every single word that you wrote, but the board members did in fact receive your email. And this one is from Kathy Gleason, who is the co-founder of the Concord Naval Weapons Stations Neighborhood Alliance. And she says it is an all-volunteer group of local residents who have been advocates of East Bay Regional Park District since 2006, working locally to help secure the open space regional park on the Concord Naval Weapons Station. We worked with Larry Tong and Brian Holt, as well as Ron Brown and Seth Adams at Save Mount Diablo. We are pleased with the name chosen for the new park. However, the name was not as important to us as securing the land was. We could rest only once the land was officially deeded over to the district, and we anxiously await the opening of the park. We suggest that East Bay Regional Park District honor Concord City Councilman Michael Chavez within the park. Michael was a parks open space advocate. We clearly remember the day he passed away in 2007 at the workshop. Despite criticism and a threat from another former council member for voting against turning the CNWS property over to Shaw Environmental early in the developmental process, Michael maintained his position to preserve open space and parks. Received an email from a Marshall Leslie, and it's just, she says the naming of this park should be called the Port Chicago Memorial Park, not Thurgood Marshall. There were 3 catastrophic disasters that took place here. The explosion in 1944, then the removal of a complete town of 2,500 humans who called it home, and the mutiny of the 50 Black sailors. You could name the Visitor Center Thurgood Marshall home to the 50, which makes more sense. It's on the old Concord Naval Weapons Station. And then she writes, this is all about human rights. Deborah Mason wrote, as chair of the Bay Point Municipal Advisory Council, I am requesting that the decision to name the Concord Hills Regional Park be postponed. I would like to bring the proposal to the BPMAC. The residents of Port Chicago suffered the trauma of the explosion and then the closure of the town. The park should be named for the town of Port Chicago, and a visitor center about the explosion be named for Thurgood Marshall. And then we also received an email from Willie Mims, and it reads, I am here representing the East County NAACP. My comments have always revolved around the naming of the Concord Hills to the Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. What's in a name? Everything. Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50, resurrects the hidden memory of a town, its Navy base, the explosion. The name itself awakens one's internal memory of an explosion that also severely damaged houses, businesses, and numerous buildings located within the town of Port Chicago. The name of Thurgood Marshall Regional Park invokes the memory of a man who would later become a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, a lead attorney for the NAACP. He has filed numerous appeals in an attempt to get these men exonerated. Therefore, the East County NAACP urges the East Bay Regional Park District to accept the name of Thurgood Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. We received 3 different letters from the cities of Concord, city of Danville, and the Castro Valley Rotary Club, who all endorsed the Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. And we also have several members of the public on this meeting, and I'm going to go in no particular order, but I see Kenyon Consulting, and you have 3 minutes, ma'am, and you can open your video.
It won't let me open it. You cannot start your video because host has disabled it.
Okay, hold on. I think I stopped it because you were, there you go. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Mishmin Tuhis, Conricot Canyon, Coyote Woman, Sayers Ruth. I am daughter of tribal chairwoman Anne Marie Sayers of Indian Canyon Moosin Band of Costanoa and Ohlone people. I really want to voice that I'm a huge proponent of honoring truth and history, all of the layers to the best of our ability. So the healing pole that was featured is a healing pole standing in Indian Canyon, and it is an 800-year-old Alaskan yellow cedar from Port Chicago, and there's a beautiful history there. And Indian Canyon has served as a safe haven for all Indigenous people in need of land for ceremony with no state or federal assistance. We are not federally recognized, and we are just one of many Ohlone communities in the Bay Area, of whose land, of our ancestors that you benefit off of, and you are privileged to earn money and be present in these spaces. So I highly recommend, and I highly want to support the work that all of you have put together, those of you who helped with this presentation, that you honor Indigenous protocol, which means by becoming familiar with the Indigenous territories of these spaces and places that we live upon, work upon, settled upon, and are just blessed to be together in community, it's really important that we honor truth and history of all of these lands. So land acknowledgements, I would love to see that across the board. And then bringing up elements of these elements of truth and history, because as one of your community members just stated, we didn't know this. We don't know what we don't know. And that is contributing to how decisions are being made. Because if you do not know the history of the land that you are on, 50 plus years, 150 years, 250 years, Portola, Ohlone Trails, 530 years. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Who did he run into? What was their language of the land? So I invite you to think about ways that we can honor truth and history, to be a huge proponent of being a good ancestor in training, because we all can learn how to be in community together. But that also means we have to look at everything, all of that information. We can't gloss over it. We can't wash it and make it softer or more subtle. We can't say the Trail of Tears was a voluntary experience. We can't say that slavery was community trying to seek job opportunities, which I have seen curriculum change. So I invite you to acknowledge all of the layers of truth and history, to not pit our communities against each other, because with some
You're frozen, Kenyon.
history
There we
that
go.
have occurred. So I really want you to think about ways of connecting. So thank you for your time. And thank you for this presentation.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is going to be Anika Birdie. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Anika.
Yes, thank you. I'm just tuning into the meeting. I do not have any comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay, I thought you did. Thank you. Our next speakers will be from Citizens of Historical Equity, Lewis Thrower, followed by Alexander Wiltz. Lewis?
Thank you. Good afternoon, GM Landreth and Honorable Board of Directors. My name is Lewis Thrower, board member with Citizens for Historical Equity. The measure of a public agency is how effectively it addresses the needs of the public. Throughout this process, we've seen the East Bay Regional Park District grow and adapt based on the needs of the community and the voices of those who have been historically neglected. It is a testament to the Park District's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion that we are here today with a community-supported staff naming recommendation. A recommendation that will give people of color a sense of belonging and will be a rare recognition of our national Black heroes. The Park District has shown the diverse communities of this region that our contributions and sacrifices do matter, and we thank you. Today, the staff's recommended park name, if approved, can ensure the true stories of Port Chicago will not be forgotten. For decades, the Port Chicago 50 were vilified and their story and intentions misrepresented. This park naming is our chance to correct that injustice and ensure their bravery and sacrifices are permanently protected. The legacy of the Patriots of Port Chicago teaches us that positive change comes at a cost, and we must constantly work and strive collectively to form a more perfect union for all. That is a story worth protecting. It is a story worth honoring. We respectfully request the Board of Directors adopt the staff's recommended park name, Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration on this important matter.
Thank you. Alexander, then followed by that Reverend McDaniel.
Good afternoon, General Manager Landreth and esteemed Board of Directors. My name is Alexander Wills, board member with Citizens for Historical Equity. The story of Port Chicago was nearly forgotten. It was Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP who made a pamphlet following the disaster that called for us to remember Port Chicago. But were it not for author Robert Allen picking up that torch, this story may have been lost forever. From there, John Lawrence and U.S. Representative George Miller held that torch, and they were joined by Congress members Mark DeSaulnier, Barbara Lee, Senator Steve Glazer, and others. All the while, Friends of Port Chicago National Memorial President Reverend Diana McDaniel was working to tell the story of the patriots who perished in the Port Chicago explosions. Raphael Allen, Kelly English, Tom Leatherman, and the team at the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial took that torch and captured the tragedy of this story in their educational programs and imbued that story with notes of hope and triumph. We must acknowledge that these many torchbearers persisted in telling the truth about the events of Port Chicago, while others were continually attempting to bury the story and diminish its importance to this nation. The future regional park is the culmination of those decades of work. And with this park naming, the torch is now in your hands. We thank the Planning Department, Park Advisory Committee, and Board Executive Committee for their strong support. We thank East County NAACP, United Veterans Council of Pittsburgh, California, and Friends of Port Chicago National Memorial for joining us in our efforts to present this community-supported park name to the Park District. We'd also like to publicly recognize the East Bay Regional Park District's Black Employee Collective. Yuli Padmore, Sabrina Pinnell, and Yolande Burial Knight are all highly respected leaders of our community and did the good work of facilitating and guiding the key stakeholder organizations to communicate and support each other towards our common goal of doing justice to this history. Their efforts helped ensure the Park District represents the diverse communities of our region, and their months of work on this park naming should be acknowledged and recognized. We sincerely appreciate the Board of Directors for their careful consideration of the staff's recommended park name, and we hope you all agree to adopt Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50, as the name of our newest East Bay Regional Park. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Reverend McDaniel, followed by Sabrina Pinnell. Reverend McDaniel.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. Well, good afternoon, President Rosario and board members, the general manager. Welcome for our new general manager for the East Bay Regional Park District and attendees of this meeting. I'm Reverend Diana McDaniel. I'm president of the Friends of Port Chicago National Memorial. And this group, the Friends of the Port Chicago National Memorial, is an official partner with the National Park Service. We want to thank you, all of the East Bay Regional Park District, for your support in bringing this new regional park into fruition. And I'd love to say thank you to Brian, to Devin, to all the staff and their research and surveying all the work they've done to bring this idea forward of this name. I'd also like to invite you to our commemoration in July. The commemoration of the explosion is held annually by the National Park Service, and we, as the official Friends group for the National Monument and Park, help plan and implement the commemoration. This year, it's going to be held on Saturday, July 17th at the memorial site at Military Ocean Terminal, Concord at 10 a.m. At the commemoration, we always acknowledge that we want the whole Port Chicago story told. The explosion, the loss of life, the injuries, the so-called mutiny, and the raising and loss of the city of Port Chicago. One year, as I shared a story of what happened to a person who lived in Port Chicago on the day of the explosion, a woman stood up and said, "I'm here, that was me." So we want this story told. A world-class visitor center, an interpretive center that will tell the story of this land and all those who've lived on it, including the indigenous people who've been treated so horrendously, and the story of the African-American heroes who helped win World War II. We know that Justice Thurgood Marshall not only appealed the convictions of the Port Chicago 50, but he was instrumental in this story being brought to the attention to the public. Without Thurgood Marshall, it is likely this story would have been swept under the carpet and forgotten. I know a decision has not been made quite yet about the naming, but we want to thank you for considering this name, Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. We say thank you.
Thank you. Sabrina, there you go. You're on mute, honey.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board, General Manager Landreth, and Clerk of the Board. My name is Sabrina Pinnell. I'm one of the co-founders of the East Bay Regional Park District's Black Employee Collective. And on behalf of the Black Employee Collective, we would like to thank the board for moving to adopt the name Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. At the former Concord Naval Weapons Station site. This park naming inspired the forming of our group. We would also like to thank the Friends of Port Chicago, Citizens of Historical Equity, the NAACP, United Veterans Council of Pittsburgh, AFSCME Local 2428, the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center, and all of the other community and legislative members that took the time to speak with us and understand the story. We hope that all of the new connections that have been established during this process will continue in all aspects of future park and trail planning, master planning, and community outreach. We would like to continue to be a liaison to assist other district staff in connecting these communication gaps. Future interpretation of this park should address any longstanding vilification or implicit blame perpetrated against the Black servicemen. Let's never forget to support representation in our region by honoring the obscured history of the Port Chicago Patriots. The historically accurate white paper and change.org petition produced by the Citizens of Historical Equity was used to inform the community today, similar to the way Thurgood Marshall created an NAACP pamphlet questioning the so-called mutiny during that time, locally, regionally, and nationally. The Black Employee Collective will continue to advocate for all peoples, including our own, whose history serves as a cultural resource that must be preserved and shared throughout our park district. We hope that one day the descendants of the 50 sailors will be able to proudly celebrate the courage and the service of their fathers, husbands, grandfathers, uncles, brothers, cousins on future Memorial Days, and sometime when the visitor center is constructed, present the sailors with an annual wreath for all that served and perished at the site. With our sincerest gratitude, we thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, during the meeting, I received an email from Eric Fuller that came from Congressman DeSaulnier. So you don't have this yet. So, and it's not an email, a letter, excuse me. And it reads, "Dear board members, I write to express my strong support to name the future regional park at the former Concord Naval Weapons Station, Concord Regional Park, as Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. Adopting this name would have both historical and representational significance. As a defender of the Port Chicago 50 in their historic fight against discrimination and wrongful convictions, Thurgood Marshall played an important role in their story. This trial and Marshall's role in it helped to play a role in the desegregation of the armed forces. As the first African-American Supreme Court Justice, Marshall is more than deserving of this honor. According to the Mercury News, this would be the first regional park in Contra Costa County named for an African-American person. with almost 10% of all Contra Costa residents being African American, it is important to honor and represent an African American hero. To both recognize the significance of Marshall's contributions to our region and pay tribute to the important work African Americans like Marshall and the Port Chicago 50 have made throughout history, I strongly support the name Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. I appreciate you taking the time to consider my views on this matter and trust they will be given the fair and thorough review they deserve. Sincerely, Congressman Mark DeSaulnier. And that is our last comment on this topic.
Great. Any last comments or questions before we take a vote? I just wanted, Director Lane.
Yeah, I have a few comments. You know, I actually know quite a bit about this explosion, and I have a friend who was in the Coast Guard on the Carquinez Bridge when it exploded. And his story about that experience is one that I think the National Park Service was able to capture. He's still around. I think he's about 99. And that was a very significant part of his life. And in Contra Costa County, many windows were blown out in areas far from the explosion. So I invite you all to read about it because it rocked the East Bay and was felt in San Francisco as well. But what I want to do today is thank staff for all of the work they've done on this. Brian Holt has been working on the Concord Naval Weapons Station since he was a young planner. And I appreciate Christina Kelchner and Devin Reef for all of the work they've done looking at the park and at the name. It's been a long process. It's been a thoughtful one. And it's taken years to create this important park. The public comments have been very profound as far as I'm concerned. You know, you heard just a sampling of them today, how articulate people are about this and what the significance of this name and the ultimate visitor center will be to many, many people. And I think it will be important for us in that visitor center to re-examine all of the historical narratives that there are in this land through the filter of social justice. And you can use that filter with the Native peoples and what happened with the town. And so I think it's an appropriate one for this area. And I would expect that the new visitor center and the Park District naturalists will put together the information which will allow this visitor center to be one of the most significant of our visitor centers in the Park District. So I look at I support the name, and I hope to make the motion for it today, but I do want to say that we need to look at next steps and talk about the future, and in particular, the visitor center. There are two things. One, the narratives and exhibits which will appear in that visitor center. And then second, the need that the Park District has to help make that visitor center happen. The name is only the first step. What we will need to do, because we have focused on this one building, is restore the building. It'll have to be designed. It will need to be constructed. And our estimate is that the visitor center is going to cost around $10 million. And it is not $10 million that the Park District has ready to go. And it could, if you look at any of the other projects that Park District has worked on over the years, it could take decades to have this visitor center. So today, I want to challenge the advocates and our elected officials to join us and help get federal funding for this visitor center. It's an important partnership between the National Park Service and the East Bay Regional Park. And as you heard, the congressman who represents this area, Mark Solnay, is in support of the name, as well as having sent last month a request for funds for the visitor center to the Department of Interior. Well, to congressional offices, which would lead to the Department of Interior. So once it is named, I want you all to think about how you could contact the groups which you represent and your congressional members in the East Bay and help us move to get the funds so we can build visitor center and all it has to say in a timely way. And finally, I just want to congratulate, in addition to the staff work, all of the advocates who worked on this name. It's been a community groundswell. Hearing from the NAACP and knowing the Citizens for Historic Equity and knowing Reverend Diana at Friends of Port Chicago and our own Black Employee Collective and many others, I just want to say to you how much I appreciate the efforts you've made and the how articulate you have been in supporting this name, and hope that you will bring that support to raising the funds for our new visitor center. Thank you.
Very well said, Director Lane, very well said. And I don't think I could add to that whatsoever, other than to say that we are about to take a historic vote.
I think she said it all too.
Yes. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Can I make this motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move we adopt the resolution which indicates the name will be Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50, for the future regional park at the former Naval Weapons Station Concord Hills Regional Park.
I'd like to second.
Excellent. We have a motion by Director Lane and a second by Director Coffey. Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote, please. Oh, you're on mute.
Director Corbett?
Aye.
Director Waspy?
Aye.
Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Lane?
Aye.
Director Eccles?
Aye.
Director Wieskamp?
Aye.
And President Rosario?
Aye.
We have unanimous approval of the name.
Good. Congratulations, everyone. Truly a historic moment.
I think we should applaud everybody in their hard work.
Yes. Well done, well done. With that, we have item 2B, authorization to transfer and appropriate funds to repair Dry Creek rock walls. There's a whole list of projects here. And I believe this is Christina Kelchner and Lisa Gorgian.
Good afternoon, President Rosario, Board of Directors. This is Lisa. I'm going to introduce this on behalf of Christina for this afternoon. I'm always so humbled after I go after a planning
item. So here we go. Let's see. So, so that being said, although this is about major maintenance, I am very excited. This is a major part of ASD's work to address these major infrastructure projects across the district, both for reoccurring projects and standalone projects. The photo in this slide is from work that was done last season, and it's part of what I described as ongoing work. So it's, we work a little bit and then we come back the next season and we work some more. And it's at Cogswell Marsh. It's Cogswell Marsh Bridge at the Hayward Regional Shoreline. So next, great, thanks Glenn. Glenn's, I think I got so excited, I'll just back up and say, I'm Lisa Gorgon, Chief of Design and Construction, and I'm here with Glenn Gilchrist, who's the Design Manager in Design and Construction. So we're here today to talk to you about the recommendation is to authorize the transfer and appropriation of major infrastructure renovation and replacement fund for 4 projects. And so they're listed on this slide. And these projects will be constructed using the job order contracting procurement method. And as per our job order contracting policy, funds need to be available in a project before we can initiate one of our, we call it a job order with one of these contractors. So the funds that are being recommended to be appropriated this afternoon will allow us to move funds into those projects so that we can start the construction portion of them. Next slide. So this is a map that was in your packet, and then there's some photos, and I just want to walk through them very quickly before I turn it over to Glenn. So 3 of the projects represent next phases of work. So as 3 of the projects, we've already done a portion of it. So the photo on the top right is at Point Isabel, continuing work on the Hoffman Channel Bridge. The photo on the bottom right is the Cogswell Marsh Bridge at Hayward Shoreline. And then I'm going to move to the bottom. On the other side, the photo on the bottom left is at Garin Dry Creek. And then moving around up to the top is a project at Lake Chabot to stabilize the West Shore Trail. This is out of these 4 projects, the Lake Chabot is the project where it's not a continuation of work we've been doing. It's a new standalone project. So again, just as kind of the way we often work is once on these major maintenance projects is once we have preliminary engineering and cost estimate done by park staff, we'll come to the board to transfer and appropriate funds into the project so that we can then move forward with construction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn, and he'll walk through a little bit more in detail what we're doing with these projects.
Good afternoon, Glenn Gilchrist, Design Manager. The first project is the repair of the Dry Creek rock walls. So we need to fill the eroded base of the wall where it is washed out. We need to put back some rock and mortar. We also need to point the mortar joints, that's put some more grout in there where it is worn out, and restore some small damaged areas of this 1930s rock wall. We had a study done, and with the help, of our new cultural resources coordinator, Anna Marie, she helped us understand the Consultant Historics Property Survey. One of the requirements is that we need to hire a mason experienced in historical restoration. yeah, every project is different. We expect we're going to need about $200,000, even though it's only 2 sections of wall, about 40 feet long and 73 feet long. But there is some uncertainty about how much this work will cost due to the requirement of having someone skilled with historical repair. The next project is the Cogswell Bridges. So you can see the damaged pile on the right there. I assure you this one has been fixed, but there are others that are, damaged, not quite as bad. And we are over several years repairing all of the piles. There are 40 piles on the long bridge, 20 piles on the short bridge. And each season we can only do about a dozen because we have a short time window. We have to work during low tide. So it's taking several years. We have a subcontractor who's done it several times now. We feel pretty good about. We're hoping we'll be able to get them back on board again. We'll see how their costing comes out, but we should be able to. There are several piles in the channel that will always be underwater. And so those are going to require some special permitting. And so we expect to do them possibly next year, but more likely the year after. We'll come back and do those particular piles. We're asking for another $200,000. And that should be plenty for this job. And I hope we have a little bit more to go forward for the next phase with some luck. The Lake Chabot Regional Park, we have the stabilized West Shore Trail. This slide happened the season before the pandemic. We were going to fix it in the pandemic season, but we just, between MAST and DECO, neither of us could get to it. We've been very fortunate that the weather has cooperated this year and it hasn't gotten much worse. The trail is still intact. So the project is to install 12 concrete soldier piles. These would be 24-inch diameter holes filled with concrete. We're going to put in basically a steel I-beam and put wood lagging between them. And that will stabilize the trail. The soil on the left side actually could slide into the lake in the future. There's not really a cost-effective way to stop that. We're hoping by taking the load off it with this wall that there won't be that tendency, but we are stabilizing the trail, not the entire slope in this project. This one has the most hassle to the public because this is a very popular trail without a detour. And so while this work is going on, we will have to close this trail, which is the loop around the trail. There really is not a very suitable detour. And we are asking for another $250,000 for this project. The Hoffman Channel Bridge at Point Isabel. This is the bridge that joins the South Point Isabel with North Point Isabel. The right side of the bridge, or the east side of the bridge, is the San Francisco Bay Trail. The left side or west side of the bridge is the trail that connects the two parts of the dog park together. We did some work on this previously. We went in there to repair some piles based on a 2015 structural assessment. And when we got in there to do the work, we found out, oh boy, we got more problems. There are more piles that needed repair. So this project will repair the remaining piles. We will also install some riprap to protect the south abutment. Currently, water is washing the soil out from behind the abutment, which is going to be damaging to the trail in front of the abutment, and also is going to cause subsidence of the abutment if we don't repair it. We tried to do this a couple of years ago. The water board had some very legitimate issues about restricting the channel and increasing the flow. So we've redesigned it and come back with an explanation, and we are hopeful that the water board will give us a permit to do this entire project this year. And we are asking for an additional $250,000 to repair the piles and the riprap at this project. With that, I'm sure you have more questions. I was going to turn it back to Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. I guess, President Rosario, before I turn it back to you, I just did want to make a comment on the Lake Chabot trail project. As Glenn commented, it's a very popular trail. It's very busy there. We did have the good fortune to work on a project a couple of years ago along the Lafayette-Moraga Trail, where we had to replace a bridge, which was the only part of the trail. There wasn't a way to get around it. And so we worked with park operations. We worked with our contractor at the time to scope it and to work out a schedule so the disruption to the public was pretty limited. And we worked with public affairs as well with signage and getting the word out. So I think we know that that's going to be disruptive. And so that's part of our scope, is to try to have less impact to the public as possible on that particular project. So so as the slide says, the recommendation is to authorize the transfer and appropriation of funds from the Major Infrastructure Repair and Replacement Fund into the projects that Glenn has just gone through. I think with that, that's our last slide.
Great.
I think, Glenn, can you stop sharing?
Questions or comments from the board? Director Waspy.
First off, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. I guess, Glenn, have you estimated how long the project at Lake Chabot will take, and when you're going to close, what time and how long will the West Shore Trail be closed?
Well, we will keep it open weekends, first off. We expect to limit the closures to weekdays. I can't be certain, but I suspect it's going to be less than a full month of weekday closures.
Great. Thank you very much. And just, I'd like to thank Lisa and Glenn for meeting with me before this meeting to describe these projects and what was going on. I truly appreciate that. It gives me a heads up. And Glenn, I'd like to compliment your good taste in featuring that incredible bridge at Dry Creek in your presentation, which I built in 1991. Thanks.
Director Lane.
Well, I love that bridge, Dennis. Dry Creek and the whole garden setup is such a gem, not well known by a lot of people who use the regional park. So I'm really glad to see that you're going to be restoring that stone wall there. I think we've had some ferocious water coming down there at different times. I don't know whether 2017 was really hard, but I remember an earlier winter which did a whole lot of damage. And that whole park is really special. So I'm glad you're working on it. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question. Oh, Director Eccles, go ahead.
I just want to chime in and thank the team for your attention to these projects and to attending to the maintenance, because of course we know what happens if we're not taking care of this infrastructure. And in particular, I want to thank you for the work on Hoffman Channel Bridge and along with all of the other projects that you're working on. So thanks.
Maintenance is certainly job security. There's no end of these projects.
Good attitude.
It's mostly bridges. Speaking of, regarding the Hoffman Bridge, wasn't there some talk some years ago about actually replacing that bridge with something a little more wider that would accommodate heavy equipment?
So Dee, I don't know if there was years ago, though there has been some talk recently about it. It depends on what sort of work we do there. If we end up doing a lot of work that requires a lot of vehicles and machines, then it would probably make sense to replace it. Right now we repair it. It'll serve all of its functions it's doing right now. It's a little tight, but it does its job. But I do think in the future, it's something to look back at.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, in the next few years when we really need it to be functioning now. But at some point, I do think you're right. I think there's a possibility that we would replace it.
Yeah, because I think it's awfully, even for, it's a congestion point, even for pedestrians. So I just think making it larger would be helpful to everyone.
Yeah, it's a very pretty bridge though.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous. All right, Director Waspy.
I move that we authorize the transfer and appropriation of funds to repairing the Dry Creek walls, repairing the Cogswell Bridge, stabilizing the West Shore Trail, and repairing the Hoffman Channel Bridge.
Excellent. Is there a second? Director Eccles. So we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Coffey.
Aye.
Director Lane.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Corbett.
Oh,
Did she leave?
yeah, she had to leave.
Okay. Director Waspy.
Aye.
And President Rosario.
Aye.
And me.
Oh, Director Eccles, sorry.
Aye.
Okay.
You're still here.
The item has been moved.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder to the public that that all this funding is possible because of the Board of Directors has set aside monies every year for these big projects that go into the future, and that's why we're able to fix these things. So kudos to board members in the past, and hopefully we can keep it up. So with that, I would like to take a little break.
My gosh, the president. Go for it, Prez.
Okay. So how's 10 minutes?
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Okay.
10 minutes.
Okay.
10 minutes. We're going to pause the recording and we will put up the slide.
Great. Thank you.
Please remember that if you come back into this meeting, you are still in a public meeting.
Got you. Thank you for the reminder.
Thanks for the reminder.
Excellent. Welcome back, everyone. Took a short little break. We are now at item number 3, Operations Division, authorization to enter into a contract with the Student Conservation Association for trail maintenance and fuels management projects, district-wide.
All right. Good afternoon again, President Rosario and members of the board. Jim O'Connor, Assistant General Manager of Operations. I first want to thank Deputy General Manager Alvarez for suggesting that we bring this item to open agenda, as it gives us a great opportunity to highlight 2 things. One, the success of this program thus far, the Small Trails Crew program, and also to highlight the collaborative work we did with our labor partners at ASME which is moving the program forward. So I just want to thank her for that. And let me screen share here. Okay, let's see if I got the right one. Okay, do you see my screen? Yes? Yep. Okay. Let's make sure so we can get this thing to work now. You see the main slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. All right, so this is our contract for services with the Student Conservation Association, or the SCA as we call them. I wanted to do a little historic perspective on this. Won't be quite as dramatic as Brian's presentation, but it's a new program, and I'm really proud of the work that's getting done by this crew. So you might recall, those of you that were around in 2018, the former chief of Maintenance Skilled Trades Department, Kelly Barrington, and I came to the board during the 2019 budget development process with an idea to start a small trails crew. And we were requesting at that time to reassign one of the vacant alternate work program supervisor positions to be a leader of a youth crew, a SCA crew at that time. And this program idea was the outcome of several years of internal conversations between park staff, maintenance skilled trade staff, ASD staff, district management, and our labor partners at ASME. And it was a new program, and the board approved that funding at that time. And in 2019 and 2020, we had a new Trails Crew supervisor, Patrick Demmons, who led the SCA crew, doing an amazing amount of work. I think all of you know that trails are our #1 recreation asset in the district. The majority of people who visit our parks every day come here to use our trail system. And unfortunately, there's been a big evolution in the park district. I think not only has the park district expanded significantly in the last 12 or 15 years, but use in our parks has significantly expanded also. And that's been really highlighted in the last 14 months or so with the pandemic, and use has increased even further. Use patterns in the parks have also changed. Park staff used to enjoy an off season when they could really catch up on projects, including trail maintenance. A lot of the changes in our climate are resulting in drier winter seasons, which means that there's still high use in the parks year round, which means there's not really an off season anymore. And then finally, one of the changes that led to the creation of the Small Trails Crew is that we also saw a downturn in participation in our alternate work program in both Contra Costa County and Alameda County. So there was less participation, less consistent participation in both those programs. And we made the decision at that time that reassigning those staffing resources, the alternate work program supervisors, better reassigned in a trails and fuel crew district-wide. And so that was all of the reason that led up to our proposal for the Small Trails Crew back in 2018. So I'm going to move forward here. So in the last couple of years, this crew has accomplished more than I actually expected in the comp. I asked for, and I have with me today also, I forgot to mention, I also have with me our new chief of MAST, Robert Kennedy, and we also have Eric Bowman, our maintenance superintendent, joining me today, and they can help us with some specific questions about the crew you may have later on. So I did ask Eric Bowman to give me a list of accomplishments of the crew, and the list is really much bigger than I expected. And I'm just going to cover some of the general categories of the work that they've been doing over the last couple of years. One of their big accomplishments is miles and miles of trail brushing in several of our parks, Las Trampas and Del Val and Reinhardt Redwood, Briones. They've just done an amazing amount of work in that area. They've also worked with our trail development team in ASD in preparing new trail corridors. So they do the brushing and clearing that allows that work group to develop new trails across the park district. So they've participated with our trail development team in that aspect of the work. We've done a lot of tread maintenance and drainage maintenance work district-wide. They've also part of our agreement in creating this was that they also have worked with our fuels crew on doing some fuel reduction work. And one of the things that's been really great about having this crew is they were really helpful for us when we had our wind closure events in 2019 and then our fire response in 2020. They, along with MASS staff, park operations staff, they went out with our fuels crew and they really helped do the prep work when we thought that the Santa Clara complex fire was coming over the hill down into Del Val. They went out and helped do some fuels reduction work in advance of that fire. Luckily, of course, the fire had never made it down to the park, but we were prepared because of this crew. And then they've also done some really nice construction of trail features, things like retaining walls and stairs, as you see in the picture on this slide. And that was under the leadership of Patrick Demmons and Eric Bowman. Now, let me bring you up to speed on the current situation. So, as you may recall, last year when we were preparing the 2021 budget, we came to you, we had an opportunity. Again, we saw a lower participation in our alternate work program, and our then AWP supervisor, our remaining AWP supervisor, Dominic Williams, had promoted to a park supervisor position at Roberts. So we had a vacancy in the position. And in the budget process, we came to you with a request to convert this additional AWP supervisor to a trail supervisor again, and to create a second Student Conservation Association SCA crew. So we proposed 2 crews district-wide operating in the budget process. ASME, through the budget process, requested for a meet and confer on this additional budget request. At the board's direction, the board approved the budget as submitted, but requested that we meet and confer with the union over this new crew, the second crew. So we did meet. We had about 3, maybe 4 or 5 meetings early in the new year. And we did, I'd like to say we did come to an agreement to create a pilot program for 21, utilizing special assignments of full-time staff from the Park District. And I'd like to just take a minute to review that program. So the agreement we came up with ASME was to create a special assignment crew for 6 months. And that crew included a Park Supervisor 1 position as the supervisor for the crew, 3 park rangers. Through the recruitment process, Patrick Demmons, our AWP trail supervisor, was appointed as the Park Supervisor 1 for this special assignment crew. And then we also backfilled his position. AWP supervisor was an actor. So that's the crew there. And this is a 6-month assignment. They started their assignment in October, and they'll be working through October. And I have to really give thanks to the several supervisors district-wide who agreed to have their staff participate in the special assignment. As I think most of you know, my ultimate vision for this work is to have full-time staff doing this work. And as I've said in the past, we've had to make through the budget process, we have a lot of staff requests in the budget process, but eventually I believe that having full-time staff will really make this program shine district-wide. Okay, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that have been this new pilot program have been accomplished. This is the Chemise Trail at Los Trompes. It's a highly used trail. It's a very steep trail. You can see from these photos, these are the before photos. It's been very overgrown. It's been very rutted. And our new crew, our pilot program with the regular staff, took this on as one of their first assignments. And you see in the picture on the right there, that is our new equipment operator, which was part of the original program approved by the board. We added an additional heavy equipment operator to the roads and trails crew to handle work requests from the small trails crew to do heavy equipment work. So you see Joseph Perez is our new equipment operator. He's cutting in the new trail, the new trail tread on the Chemise Trail. And these are some after pictures, and One of our goals with the program is to rehabilitate trails. And if you look in this picture, you see that we like to have our single track trails 4 to 5 feet in their final state. So this, you can see, we reestablish the outslope. We take the berm that builds up on the outslope, which often then channels water down the trail. And then let me move on to the next picture. So I'll just geek out a little bit, trail geek with you for a minute here. This is a great picture here. You see this switchback here, and this is what we call a climbing turn. Most switchbacks come to a V, which makes it very difficult when you're an equestrian or a bicycle rider to make the corner. This is what's called a climbing turn and trail logo, and this is really well done. It's a very continuous grade. It's got a great drainage to it. You see a drain dip on the downhill side of this. This is really excellent work on behalf of our staff. This is really high quality trail work, and I have to commend them for getting this done so early in the process. And I've hiked the Chemise Trail several times, and this is really glad to see this. So it's really nice work. They're also working on the Buckeye Trail at Anthony Chabot. And this is just one of the projects they're doing. They're putting in a retaining wall, and you can see that's a really high quality retaining wall with it's keyed into the slope, and it's going to last for many, many years. So we really got off to a great start. You've got to remember they've only started in May, and these are 2 projects they've already completed. So they're off to a great start. Which brings us to today. So at your request, we did meet and confer with the union. We came to an agreement to create the pilot program. But what we're looking for is the funding for the one SCA crew that we're going to operate between June and March. So June of 2021 and March 22nd. So what we're requesting is your approval and authorization to enter into a contract with the Student Conservation Association, provide semi-skilled labor for a trail and fuels management projects district-wide for a 10-month period between June 21 and March of 22. And with that, I am here, Robert is here, and I've got Eric Bowman here to answer any questions you might have. And I'll stop screen sharing.
Great, questions from the board.
We also, President Rosario, we also have a Mr. Jay Watson that is going to speak on this item.
Okay, great. Director Lane.
So with the SCA crew, they are not AFSCME members, or are they?
They are not. They are a contracted youth crew, which provides a labor source, which reports to our the acting alternative work program supervisor.
Okay, so AFSCME wanted them to be regular employees, right? Not a student crew.
Yeah, in the 21 budget, Director Lane, what we were requesting was you remember 2019, we had one SCA crew, and in 2021, we were asking to add a second crew under the other AWP supervisor and reassign them from the AWP program over to trails. And so we were asking for a second youth crew as a labor source, and AFSCME worked with us to come up with this pilot program using a special assignment from our regular staff.
Okay, and so what that means is we have fewer regular rangers in our parks, right?
Well, actually, we are backfilling those positions. So we've taken our full-time staff, they've been reassigned to this trail crew for 6 months, and we're backfilling their positions in the parks.
Okay. Well, I'm of a couple minds here because I like getting young people into the, they have that experience.
Well, to that point, Director Lane, one of our goals was also to expose these young people to the park district and the work we do. And we actually have had one of the crew members who now is a park ranger at Black Diamond Mines. So we've had a little bit of transfer from the program into district staff, which is a great goal.
Okay, I'll say, yeah, thanks.
Great. Director Coffey.
Now I'm a little confused because I'm not hearing. It's going in different directions in my mind. I was understanding that this is the second crew.
That's correct. The request for the SCA is the second crew. We already have the pilot programs crew working, and this is the second crew.
Okay, but these are then this is a program that benefits this youth base.
Correct. Correct.
It's just you're involving more full-time staff than originally proposed.
The original program that started in 2019 was one AWP supervisor and 5 SCA crew members. So in 21, what we wanted to do was have 2 SCA crews and 2 AWP supervisors. But what we've worked out and what's moving forward is we already have the pilot program, which is full-time staff on special assignment, 4 of them. And then now we're asking for the funding for the SCA crew for this year and partially of next year. So we will have 2 crews operating, 1 youth crew and 1 special assignment crew with full-time staff.
Okay, now I get it. I was failing to make that distinction, and I understand what Beverly was lamenting, that we don't have 2 crews involving the youth-oriented programs. Okay.
Great. Anyone else? Director Wieskamp.
I can only say it looked like they were doing good work. And we all know how much the trails have been used this last year. So congratulations on getting that in place.
Thank you, Director Wieskamp. It's been a big project for across a lot of people in the Park District. So it's been a lot of team effort.
Good.
Director Waspy. Oh, you're on mute, sir.
All right. I totally support this. I think the trails get much better care. It's great learning experiences for youth, and to have Patrick Demmons teaching them, I think, is an incredible, fortunate experience for those youth that are going to be learning a lot of great things and hopefully getting jobs.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that the pilot program that AFSCME 2428 recommended is going forward. I thought that was quite innovative. And I also appreciate the SCA crews. I know I've worked with them when I was park supervisor at Redwood. I would take over the leftovers when they ran out of work in the fire department. I grabbed onto them because they were wonderful. So yeah. So then there's no other comments. I'd like to hear public comments.
Yes, Mr. Jay Watson, there you go. Were you here to speak on this item, sir?
Yes, just confirming you can all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so once again, I have, the privilege of appearing before the board and President Rosario and assembled park staff. This is a program that we are really, really proud. Okay. It's a program that we're very proud of. It's the 3rd 10-month crew that we've put in place over a 3-year period. And our staff on the ground, both Eric Bowman and Patrick, have provided just terrific experiences for all of our crew members. You've brought on an additional crew supervisor, was on a call with the other day, along with Patrick, but we're really very excited to field the crew. We're obviously hopeful that the contract will be approved. And 2 things I really quickly would like to point out is 3 of the 5 members have been recruited locally this year. Normally we recruit nationally, but we have 3 of the 5 are locally recruited from communities. And in addition to the funding that the contract would provide, we were able to secure a $16,000 grant, which we used to increase the member living allowances, which I think made it more competitive to local young adults because they know how much it costs to live here. So we're really looking forward to a successful year. So thank you very much for the chance to say a few words.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other comments?
No, President Rosario.
Okay, if there's no other comments from the board, I would entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Director Wieskamp. Director Waspy is second. A motion and a second. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Lane?
Aye.
Director Eccles?
Aye.
Director Waspy?
Aye.
Director Rosario?
Aye.
And Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Unanimous approval of this item.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you.
Good for everybody.
And now we're at item number 4, General Manager's comments. I believe we have a staff presentation. Hey, this is General Manager Jim O'Connor.
Okay. Oh, there's Jim Landreth. I'm not sure if she wanted to do an introduction.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on it. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to give a brief introduction, and I'm going to have to Ira and Kevin. You know, we've talked a lot about the work that the Interp and Rec staff did in the pandemic, the pivot that they made towards digital services during the pandemic. And that work is continuing. You know, if there's a lemonade out of lemon story, I have to say that what you're going to hear now is that lemonade is, you know, we took what was a very bad situation worldwide, if not locally, and we're turning that into an expansion of our services, something that we've always talked about, especially on the interpretive side, and especially when it relates to school programming. And I want to recognize our supervising naturalist, Kevin Damstra, who's a supervising naturalist at Black Diamond. Well, Kevin's not certainly alone in this work. He was doing it well before the pandemic started and pushing it onto all of us older dogs that were pushing against it and questioning whether or not it would work. And Kevin was pushing forward with virtual reality and alternate reality. And, you know, he was right in the long run. And the pandemic had a chance for Kevin to work with his fellow, his colleagues in interpretive services and to really make this new technology blossom. And I think it's going to be a real benefit to our teachers in the district and beyond the district. And to families who are trying to support at-home learning or you know, an expansion of their learning. And I think it's really great. I just want to recognize Kevin's kind of leadership in that area. And that really played out just about as Kevin was pushing this, the pandemic came around and it's just turned into something really great. So with that, I'm going to pass off to Ira.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim. This is Ira Bletz, Regional Interpretive and Recreation Services Manager. And also, as you know, Kevin Damstra, Supervising Naturalist at Black Diamond Mines is here. Thank you for this opportunity, President Rosario and board members, to bring you an update on what we're doing with virtual school field trips and with information we're providing for teachers, which we're calling education bundles. And then Kevin is going to share kind of the future of where we're going with some exciting new projects. So let me share my screen. All right. So if remembering back to the beginning of the pandemic, we got a little bit of an early warning. We got about a week's worth of early warning when at all of our offices, the phones lit up as teachers were canceling their programs. A few days later, the state issued its shelter-in-place order, and everything changed. We found ourselves in a situation with no audience and no ability to do in-person programming. So, pulling everyone together, and as AGM O'Connor mentioned, with Kevin Damstra's leadership, we created a strategy for moving forward. What could we do in the short term, and then going forward into the pandemic? And within 2 weeks, we were releasing our first pre-recorded videos, which were 2 series, the East Bay Creature Features, which who doesn't love wildlife, and stories about them, and they proved to be amazingly popular, and then Stories and Songs, which were aimed at a younger audience. These received a tremendous amount of positive comments from people, from parents who were at home with their children, from teachers who were using them to add to their digital teaching. And so from there, we went forward and we branched out into several categories of digital programming. We had pre-recorded public programs. This is Supervising Naturalist Sonia Gomez at Ardenwood. Ardenwood could not do its July 4th special event, very popular community festival. So they did one on as a pre-recorded video, and it was aimed at allowing people to celebrate in some of the ways they would celebrate at Ardenwood at home. We also started doing virtual live programming. This is naturalist Morgan Gunther from Mobile Education, and she's there at Reinhardt Redwood Regional Park doing a live program on redwoods. We also had our app facilitated programs, which we've talked with you before. We have a series that were developed before the pandemic, including the Alameda Creek Watershed, Pleasanton Ridge, Concord Hills. And that was really our start. And these were rolled out to the public through our Mobile Visitor Center 2, which is the one based at Shadow Cliffs. But we really wanted to provide service to the schools. And so we launched virtual school programs. The staff, the Sunol Del Val staff were the first ones to really launch into it. And then they were able to put together a training for all of our interpretive staff and recreation staff to give them some pointers and build their confidence in doing this new type of interpretation. This is naturalist Virginia Delgado Martinez at Black Diamond, and she's doing a program on wildlife. And you can see she's holding a friendly gopher snake. And here's Supervising Naturalist Kevin Damster doing a program for students as well. We offered these out to teachers and they gobbled them up. They flocked to us for these sorts of programs. This is naturalist Ashley Adams. Sometimes our staff was not in the office. I threw this slide in to show you that sometimes the naturalist staff was at home, but doing this from their house or their backyard. So from when we started this effort last year, we've served 411 classes and over 20,000 students have participated in virtual school field trips. In many cases, they are the same subject matter that we use in our in-person field trips, but obviously formatted differently for the virtual world. Teachers can sign up for these programs through our district webpage and through the Samaritan interface, which allows them to register online for these programs. We also wanted to provide teachers with some more in-depth material. We partnered with the Alameda County Office of Education to create what we were calling education bundles. We wanted to provide teachers with something more than just a pre-recorded video. It would include supplemental materials, and let me show you what we're talking about. So working with the folks at the county office, we laid out an outline for what one of these bundles should look like. We also contacted the Contra Costa County Office of Education. They gave us some good insight, but they were so swamped with what was going on in their schools that they were not able to stay with us for very long, but they were a helpful partner. And you can see what we started, each unit would have a pre-recorded video and then a teacher's guide, supplemental materials for the teacher to help them present that. We put together pre and post activities for the students, and then a companion story, a pre-recorded story where a naturalist is reading a grade level appropriate story on that subject. Then the teachers had the opportunity to book a chat with a naturalist. After the students had gone through all of these pieces, they could then have a meeting with a naturalist, a virtual meeting, to answer any of the students' questions. We also wanted to provide them with additional resources, including we aligned these programs to next generation science standards if they dealt with science or natural history. We also aligned our cultural history programs with the California Social Studies and History content standards. The education bundles are available to teachers. They are on the district webpage, and they can grab the video and they can get their hands on PDFs of all the companion materials. And so people have started using these, and we're excited about producing some more of these going into the future. This is an example of one of the supplemental materials. This was for the pond study program. This is a scavenger hunt. And then a clip from one of the pre-recorded companion stories. Again, naturalist Morgan Gunther reading a story about ponds. And then here's a chat with a naturalist. That's naturalist Erica Stevens from Sonol, and she's chatting with a class that has gone through the whole education bundle. This is what naturalist programs have looked like during the pandemic. And now that's kind of an update on the virtual field trips and our education bundles that we've created. Now I want to turn it over to Supervising Naturalist Kevin Damstra.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. Kevin Damstra, Supervising Naturalist out at Black Diamond Mines. And over the past year, we've had a tremendous opportunity not only to build the videos and build our virtual connection, but also to see how people engage in a virtual world and find ways to make that engagement deeper even when people aren't able to physically be in the parks. And there's two different categories that we'll kind of be focusing on. The first one is what's known as augmented reality. And this is the best known version of this is Pokemon Go. We are not creating Pokemon Go in our parks. But we are creating an educational version of this. We have a series of apps right now. Two of them have already launched on both Apple and Google's app stores. The Ardenwood Farm app is probably the most developed. The East Bay Parks virtual tour was actually the very first of these environmental education learning apps that was created by our partner Time Looper. That's the company that we've worked with to create our virtual reality tours that Ira mentioned earlier. And that one will be getting updated here soon because it was created using content that was created in those first 3 or 4 weeks of the pandemic. These are map-based apps that show our regional parks and have interactive elements that can bring you into a 360-degree environment, and they run off of everybody's phone or tablet. 2 more are about to launch. That is the Big Break one, talking about water issues out on California's Delta, and then the Black Diamond Mines one. Those are being followed by Tilden and Coyote Hills as well, that already have a lot of the content put together. Ira, if you want to switch to the next slide. So for the Black Diamond Mines one, we are actually creating the historic town site of Summersville. So Summersville was one of our coal mining towns. We have lots and lots of historic photos. We actually have a memory map of where the buildings were located. Using the photos, Time Looper has created a CGI version of the different buildings. These are some of the historic photos that we have from the Summersville Hotel and their early version of the CGI rendering. Ira, if you can click again. These are then being placed onto basically a Google Earth version of the park so that we can see exactly where they would be. You can see the hotel here. There's also a smaller building that is one of the town's saloons, and Time Looper created the inside of the saloon using accurate photos from period saloons in California and across the West Coast. And in that, it gives us an opportunity to interpret the temperance movement and to use quotes from our oral histories talking about the families that ran some of the saloons out in the town. Ira, if you can click again. All of these will be built together to show the history of the people who lived in the town. And it's something that can be built into our visitor center. It's also something that again, anyone can download onto their devices. Right now, each park is an individual different app. It was an agreement and a partnership that Time Looper actually gave these products to us as we were testing them out for them. So they're not branded the way that we would normally like to. And we're looking into ways to correct that in the future. But in this, you can actually see how some of the buildings would grow up around the town site. This is the Pittsburgh Mine Hoist House. And from here, we're actually creating a way for people to go underground into the new coal mine experience. And we've taken a 360-degree image in that. So people who aren't able to get into the coal mine experience themselves will be able to experience it virtually through the augmented reality app. The augmented reality app, again, it does operate just on your phones. So people can see it on the phone or on the tablet. Right now, that is the only way that it can be interacted with. In the future, we can actually build this onto our website so that this could be something that people can interact with on our website. And there is the possibility to create an entire learning platform where teachers would be able to interact just with their classes through this app, that we would be able to have a naturalist come in and join them virtually and facilitate some of the learning that way as well. The augmented reality allows us to interact with people in a large scale, this is what you'll see in the park type way. The other one that we've been working on is building upon our virtual reality programs. And Ira, if you can click. Last year, the Regional Parks Foundation supported us purchasing 7 VR headsets like this. Originally, this was to take the 4 VR experiences that were part of Time Looper's original app and bring them onto the Oculus system. Oculus is one of the leading virtual reality device makers. They're owned by Facebook. And they have, we took those 4 and then we also added to that holograms, excuse me, members of the Ohlone tribe came and filmed with us in front of the green screen. Those films were able to be turned into holograms that will be able to be used in the augmented reality and also have been embedded into 360-degree VR experiences from inside the park, inside Coyote Hills, and also being able to see objects and handle it there. In a moment, we'll show a video that highlights both the Ohlone connection and then also a new experience from Mission Peak. And I'll tell you a little bit more as we go through that experience. All of these things being brought together, we were able to bring into a brand new, first of its kind, as far as I know, anywhere in the world, virtual reality visitor center for East Bay Regional Park District. So Ira, if you want to click us over, and we are now inside the VR visitor center. This is me wearing the headset, the Exploring the Parks with the original version, bringing us into the Concord Hills area. Here's our Indigenous Peoples room. We do have artifacts that we're actually able to pick up and hold. Each one of these artifacts has a voiceover going that tells you a little bit about it. Mission Peak tells us about climate change in the Bay Area. And you're actually able to go into the future and into the past. Going into the past, you can see that all of the development goes away. It also starts to highlight what the landscape used to look like as far as wildlife and plants. Going into the future, we focus a lot on human changes due to climate change, showing sea level rise. And we're also able to focus on some of the goals and things that can change in the future that would make things better. This is Stanley Boulevard right outside of Shadow Cliffs with an imagined bike trail, newer cars going down, and you can see in the distance the wildlife overpass to allow wildlife to get across Stanley Boulevard. All of these things were developed with our naturalists working across the park district. Mission Peak was handled by the staff down at Sonolan and Del Val. Coyote Hills staff were involved with the Ohlone projects. Black Diamond staff have been involved in kind of managing and coordinating all the rest of it. And we've been able to put all of this together in ways that engage people in a very different experience than what they've had just looking at a screen and watching videos. Overall, in 2020, we served 861,000 people through our digital learning programs. This includes all of the apps that we've used, all of the videos, all of the virtual live programs. That's 36% more people served in the digital world than we served on all of our interpretive programs, visitor centers, and roving contacts in 2019. These have allowed us to expand our stories. So we're able to tell stories that either would be more difficult to tell in person, sometimes because it's difficult to show things, or you want to utilize technology that out in the field is sometimes hard to use. But it also expands our reach. The Legacy of Civil Rights pre-recorded video was a partnership with the National Park Service. talking about the new Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50. And we focused very much on telling not only the story of the 50, but also how that story impacted and influenced people going forward. More recently, we have been partnering with the National Park Service to continue to highlight those stories. And coming up in the middle of June, right around Juneteenth, we will be creating a partnership program telling the stories of the survivors in the Port Chicago 50, and then also focusing on the new regional park, utilizing the virtual reality headsets and being able to bring people out to the park in a virtual way. We also have been able to highlight some of the untold stories that, well, we knew about and we talked about. This allows us to expand our reach in telling those stories. The bottom picture here is from a Zoom program that Ashley Adams, one of our naturalists at Black Diamond, did, all about the Chinese miners out in the town of Somersville. We do have some information about them being out there, but nowhere near as much as we would like. A regular walk talking about this would have had maybe 15 people. In this particular case, we had 93 people join us. So the digital world has been a tremendous way for us to be able to expand our reach. Thank you very much for allowing me to showcase some of the great work that my peers have been doing.
Great. Questions and comments from the board?
It's a different world. Different world. Well, it's just adding to what we already had and reacting quickly to a very peculiar circumstance. I can't believe that the parents and teachers and all aren't thrilled to have this in this year. Just good job all around. Very creative. Just very, I'm so impressed with all you do.
Director Lane.
So are other park districts doing very similar things? Or are we out there by ourselves?
Well,
other park districts that I'm aware of have been doing a lot of the videos and the virtual live programs. We were one of the first. We actually helped to train and teach many others. We partnered with the National Association for Interpretation to do an entire certificate training program this year on digital learning, and a number of our naturalists were involved in that. As far as the augmented reality and the virtual reality, we have been one of the first. It is us and a few of the national park sites, including places like Pearl Harbor, and then California State Parks is coming right behind us, and they'll be starting to build some of these things as well.
So are you talking how you're going to integrate these into the programs as people come back to the visitor centers?
Yes, the augmented reality works very well. The Black Diamond one, we're already talking with our friends at Exhibit Design to build in a part of a new exhibit that would allow people to actually interact with the town site through the AR app. The virtual reality components has the headsets you need to have. So the Mobile Visitor Center 2, it was designed so that will be built into that visitor center and be able to be utilized that way as well. As far as the number of videos that we've created, which at this point in time is over 2,000 videos, many of us have started to use those not only on social media, but also looking at updating the videos that play on a loop in our visitor center, and potentially even being able to put multiples on and allow people to pick which ones they'd like to watch.
Great.
Director Eccles and Director Coffey.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the presentation and for this incredible work. You've heard me talk about this before, how much I love all of the online and digital education, particularly at this time when we couldn't do it in person. But of course, even going forward, once we can bring people back, it's just so important to as you've shown us, to increase the reach, because not everybody can travel to the parks, and especially folks who live outside the area or in other parts of California, other parts of the country even. So I think this is really great, and it's really exciting what you're doing going forward in terms of the virtual reality and the opportunities there as well. And I just had one question about that in terms of the headsets. So are the headsets mostly going to be used actually in visitor centers and mobile visitor centers, or is that something that people would use also to be able to access something online?
So the Mobile Visitor Center 2 has a headset built into it. So that one will have one already there. We have the set of 7 headsets that are designed to be able to be lent out to classes. And we're in the process right now of developing a curriculum to utilize the virtual reality visitor center. VR headsets are best suited for an older age group of kids than we often work with, which also expands our reach into a different age group than what we typically use. As of today, now that Thurgood Marshall Regional Park has an official name, we will be going back and updating the name of the VR portion in the virtual reality visitor center. Once that is completed, the virtual reality visitor center will be launched on Oculus's system, and it will be able to be downloaded by anyone that has a Oculus headset anywhere in the world. So that will be available to the public through that as well.
Great, thank you. And how nice that you can update the signage so quickly in the online world, right? So anyway, yeah, thanks. Wonderful work.
Yeah. So Kevin, those 7 headsets designed to be lent out, is that just to kids or any other group of 7 possibly?
You volunteering?
Right now,
never mind. Now those apps, those Black Diamond and Big Break type of app, that requires you to go to the Apple Store and download the app for each of those parks. It's not just one app that does those. That's 2 different apps, for instance.
As of right now, it is 2 different apps. We have a hope and requests in to consolidate them into one app. When this started, this was through our partnership with Time Looper. It was a gift. So other organizations have been charged for the use of these apps. They've developed 6 of them for us free of charge. But it is my hope that we'll be able to consolidate them and make it clear that it is an East Bay Regional Park District app.
This is all just totally awesome. I'm very excited about it. The idea of being able to glide or walk or view Somersville, how it actually was. You know, I've done a pub crawl there with Eddie Willis to actually, but literally Eddie knows where all the pubs were, and he goes up, puts up pictures, and it's a Black Diamond pub crawl. That's just incredibly exciting to me, and I feel like a kid, you know, and Christmas is only a few weeks away. When will that be available?
The Black Diamond Somersville one, I expect to be completed by the end of June, and then it usually takes 2 to 3 weeks for it to launch, because it goes through their whole review process.
Okay, that's going to be on my calendar, but I just want to congratulate you and Ira and the whole Naturalist program. It struck me the other day. Oh, and you left out one of my favorites, Virginia's Cahoots games. Yeah, I used to be good at them and they got progressively harder. In any event, Kahoot is a game, an app that is live action. You can interact as the naturalist is quizzing you on naturalist trivia. And you're live on an app and your score is on the screen, and it's a lot of fun. It just struck me the other day as I've engaged in these activities, because they're a lot of fun and interesting. Ashley's presentation on the Chinese history in Antioch was fascinating. Very well done and very well presented. So I keep coming back to that. It struck me the other day that based on what you folks are doing and what Carol and Public Affairs are doing, and everyone else that's generating digital is East Bay Parks has become a media company. I mean, the numbers you were reaching, the impact it's having, we're very much now a regional media company. It's an amazing thing, and just want to congratulate everybody on it. And you know, on top of just impact we're having as an organization, it's helped our community get through some tough times. That's really important. We all feel very good about it.
Great. Anyone else? I just have a question, and a request. Question is, if out of those 861,000 people or so people that used our services this year, are we able to discern the demographics of those users?
In a certain way, yes. That it's not as easy as going all the way across the board, but through social media, they do take a lot of insights and a lot of demographic information that is linked to individual posts. So I can go into a particular video and see the average age demographics, and if people list their ethnicity, then that would all show up as well. So we do have some of that information through there.
Oh, that's good. And then my request is, I had the privilege of sitting in on your presentation to the Regional Parks Foundation, and I really loved that story that Colin was talking about, Ashley's story on the Chinese in Antioch. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind retelling that story.
Certainly. So over the past few years, the Nationalist Department has been, Interp and Rec has been going through a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion training and building that into our programming. And that's culminated over the last 2 years in finding stories that have historically been undertold. And then dedicating time to actually doing research and pulling those stories forward. One of the ones that Ashley Adams identified and that the Black Diamond staff identified very early on was the story of the Chinese in the Mount Diablo coal field. And we found some newspaper articles that talk about them having worked in the mines and being forcibly excluded. The story of Antioch came up, and Antioch being a sundown town, and in 1876 violently expelling people from the Chinese people from the city of Antioch. During Women's History Month, Ashley highlighted one of those stories in her 5-minute vignette about women's history. And there's a lot of things that have all lined up very nicely. I have no evidence that they are causal, but they are anecdotally interesting when you look at them. Ashley's video posted approximately a week later, the San Francisco Chronicle did a whole article about the history of what happened in 1876 in Antioch. They actually quoted the same article that Ashley read from during her presentation. A week after that, the mayor of Antioch acknowledged that this history happened and stated that he wanted to bring it more to light. And then Ashley's presentation occurred, the longer 45-minute presentation that I showed you a picture from. And at that same time, the city of Antioch has formally acknowledged what happened, apologized for it, and has moved forward with trying to interpret that history within the city. So we are very much involved in a lot of these conversations and stories that are happening across our region with one of our closest government partners, with the city of Antioch.
Yeah, I think it was just a great story. And I think it was a kind of a perfect segue from May to June, as May was Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I thought was a great story to relate. So thank you very much. It just goes to show you too, like when you have time and you get an opportunity to do that research, what you'll find, and just looking at things differently also as well, for the equity lens. It's amazing. So thank you so much for all the incredible work. This is, it's mind-boggling. And I think somebody from the Regional Parks Foundation said that this would be a huge, huge benefit to a lot of our senior communities as well. So thank you so much, and thank everyone on your team there that has participated in and put into this. Director Wieskamp.
Think about doing one about Tesla. I keep thinking that we could get to a lot of people and encourage the right thing to happen there. Just think ahead and see if you can come up with all the wonders that are there and how we could sell it to the world that we need to sell it to. Great creative. I mean, and you've got Colin addicted. I can tell.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank everybody involved.
Yes, please.
We will. Thank you for the time.
You're welcome. Okay, that brings us to item number 5, announcements from closed session.
Director Rosario, there are no announcements from closed session.
Great, thank you. And our favorite, now our favorite part of the day, board comments. I'm going to start with going to my right on my Brady Bunch screen here. Director Wieskamp, then Waspy, then Coffey, then Eccles, and then Lane.
Okay. Since the last board meeting, I had a one-on-one with General Manager Lambert at Camp Arroyo, and the wind was going like this. So we took a look at the new yurt, which is great. And then we went inside the famous Straw Bale building and had a great discussion about lots of things. I think it's outstanding how she's getting out to all of these parks and meeting with everybody. It's just it's a great way to get to know each other in a better setting than a park. I enjoyed the Capitol Trail workshop. I found that Mr. Gould was the facilitator, was good to talk to. He seemed very insightful. I found out that he was a former general manager, so maybe that's how he can sort of relate to Sabrina so well. We had an operations meeting, and then we had the our Del Valle Visitor Center reopening. And thank you, Beverly, for coming, and Dee. And I don't think anybody was told we were going to be covered with spray or with mosquitoes or both. But it was most enjoyable. And when you get a chance, go and see it. It's just, everybody was so creative. They came up with something that everybody's going to enjoy. While there, I had a conversation with Olivia San Juan. You know, she's on my appointee on our advisory board, and she is also the president of Zone 7. And we took the chance to talk about the potential for solar over not just the state aqueduct, but all of those ag canals over in the valley. And evidently the study I read about was a joint study between the University of Merced and the University of Santa Cruz. And there are so many benefits when you think about it. I hadn't thought about it, but Olivia said, hey, that aqueduct, to move that water, take a lot of energy. So there is such a potential win. The agricultural community, people who need water, people who do all of these things. How we can put it together, I don't know, but she's going to work on it with water districts. But I think it benefits us, obviously, because do we have enough water in Lake Del Valle? Do we have enough water in Shattuck this year to have swimming? No. So whatever we can do to help, I think it's worth looking into. And that's it.
Director Waspy.
Thanks, Steve. On the 21st, I attended the board workshop. On the 25th, I attended the final, hopefully final meeting of the COVID task force. we tried to shut this thing down because our job was to work ourselves out of a job in this task force. And I think we've done it this time, and I just want to give my compliments to everyone that was involved, and especially Dr. Ana Alvarez, who guided us through this whole process. I also met with Rob Gould for the GM evaluations. Very informative and very enlightening talk with him. On the 26th, I met with Steve Harker, the president of Touchstone Golf, who runs, among other golf courses, Redwood Canyon Golf Course. We toured the course. He showed me all the great things that they're doing out there, and he was very thankful for the collaboration and all the great work that our staff has been helping him with. It's a great collaboration, and the course is really coming along. On the 27th, I had the great opportunity to go out with Doug McConnell up on the Louis property, and with Sean Dugan and some folks from the Bay Area Ridge Trail, and I think we laid claim to the 400th mile of the Bay Area Ridge Trail. I don't know if we'll be fought for that honor, but I think we had to grasp it really tight and say it's ours, because we're very close to being the 400th mile and the completion of that 550 mile trail. On the 28th, I met with Damien Chenard of the Chenard Vineyard. Boy, what a great opportunity it is out there. The vineyard's looking beautiful. It's an excellent venue, and in fact, we're going to do a little thing out there in the next couple of weeks to kind of test run it. Yesterday, I got out and about in the parks. There were lots of folks out there enjoying the day. I looked at Roberts, talked to the lifeguards and park staff, and they looked like they're happy and getting back into the swing of things. I went to Cole Canyon, Don Castro, and Lake Chabot. And that was it. Thanks very much.
Great.
I'm nexty. All right.
Yes.
On May 20, I attended the coal mine exhibit, ribbon cutting out at Black Diamond Mine. That was a wonderfully planned and executed event. Thank you, Carol Johnson. And a lot of good feelings, good vibes came out of the people who were attending that event. And it was great to get out and meet people in person that I had never met in person before, like our new general manager. That was kind of neat. Also attended the Board Capital and Trails Projects workshop on the 21st. On the 22nd, I was given a tour of the John Muir Land Trust Lower Walnut Creek Pacheco Marsh project tour. It was similar to an outing I recall Jim O'Connor taking us on several years ago. This is part of the Contra Costa Flood Control and Land Trust Lower Walnut Creek Marsh Restoration Project. It's approximately 200 acres, about to get underway. I also met with Mr. Gould, our facilitator for the evaluation process of the general manager. On the 27th, attended this time a virtual John Muir Land Trust program on its Pittsburgh Family Harvest Farm project, by which they've acquired a number of acres in Pittsburgh that they've got a working farm on now, growing vegetables for the community, and it's acting as a vehicle for kids through the foster programs to come out and learn agriculture and learn how farming works. 28th, I enjoyed listening in on the Finance Committee via YouTube. I thought that was a very well done committee meeting, Director Lane. And just this morning, I attended President Rosario's pre-planning meeting for this meeting this afternoon. Throughout the last couple of weeks, I've spent a lot of time working with Director Eccles and having meetings with the Sierra Club and the Citizens for East Shore Parks and senior staff on Point Malati opportunities that have been placed in front of us in light of the City of Richmond's new council opposition to housing out there. So a lot of scrambling going on around that opportunity. Spent a lot of time the last week out on the trail, the Bay Trail between Hercules and Rodeo, which just opened this week. They took the fences down Monday, and word got out, and everybody in Hercules and Rodeo is out there checking it out and enjoying the nice weather we've been having on this brand new Bay Trail segment. So that's been quite exciting. A lot of good feelings out here in Hercules. That about covers it. Dee, thank you.
Thank you. Director Eccles?
Great, thank you. So on May 20th, I spoke at the virtual groundbreaking for the Gilman Overcrossing. And as you've heard me talk about before, this is a pedestrian and bicycle bridge that's going to provide safe access to cross over I-80 and connect West Berkeley with McLaughlin East Shore State Park and the Bay Trail. I'm very excited about that. And again, I want to thank everybody involved, our partners, community advocates, our staff. It's going to be great. On the 20th and 21st, had a number of meetings with our various stakeholders regarding Point Pinole, Point Malate, including, this has got Point Pinole on my mind, Point Malate, including Citizens for East Shore Park and a Sierra Club. And then on the 21st, I attended the board workshop number 4 on capital projects and trails. On the 25th, attended the board operations committee meeting. On the 26th, met with Rod Gould, who, as you heard, is our facilitator, to work with us with our GM on her work plan and evaluation. And then finally, on May 28th, I attended the board finance committee. That's it. Thanks.
Everyone's been busy. Director Lane?
Yeah, I will say it's really impressive what everyone, I mean, you're all over the East Bay doing all these cool things, and having some new things to open and dedicate is really enjoyable, isn't it? So yeah. 2 of the events that I went to, I really enjoyed. One was the coal mine opening, and seeing how that was set up, and they're interpreting it and turning the lights off, and you can see how dark it was in there. And so I really enjoyed that, and saw some retirees. Rick and Kitty Yarborough came. He was our miner for a long time, and Tracy Parent was there as well. And so lots of people I hadn't seen in a while. So that was a wonderful event. And then the next week, I did have a chance to go to Del Valle Visitor Center, and that's just going to be a wonderful amenity for all those people in the campground and around Del Valle. And long overdue to have something of that significance in that park, which is which draws so many people in the sunny part. And I think there was a lot of appreciation. Well, I know Olivia appreciated the fact that one of the major themes was the water, what happens with it, where it goes, and the interactive levers, which I have yet to be skilled at, but I thought it looked great. So I really appreciated being able to go to both of those. I did take the ethics training, and one of the things that I found interesting was that they do bring in the new Brown Act amendments, which are almost always another level of restriction. So, the message I received was, don't send any information via email to anyone, or, it may become a consensus. So back to the telephone. Anyway, I'm glad that that is over. On meetings, I went to the Capitol Trails workshop. I went to the Park Advisory Committee, and they're very impressive with the kind of questions that they ask. And I'm glad we provide the kind of level of information we do to the PAC. I had a good conversation with Rod Gould, who's the consultant. Met with the two Deborahs in advance of the Finance Committee meeting. And we had skipped a Finance Committee meeting. So we had this goal of being really efficient. Because there was a lot of material, and I think we succeeded in being efficient there. And then I want to congratulate the COVID task force on working well over a year to help things happen smoothly for the Park District, and providing some understanding from the policy level to our AFSCME representatives. I did enjoy the video on the tree mortality that Carol Johnson sent to us. Videos are really useful ways to communicate. So, and I appreciated getting that sent to me. And then I guess the other thing I did was I had a nice conversation with Congressman DeSaulnier, telling him how we do anticipate his activity on behalf of the visitor center. So that's my last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Great, you were busy too. Okay, so on the 19th, I attended the CSDA legislative days. It was actually only one day I could attend. The one significant meeting there was the wildfire legislation breakout, and the woman from the Department of Public Resource, I think, Jessica Morris, was just a wealth of information as far as funding. Apparently her department is getting all the wildland fire money that was put out earlier, and they've divided California into 6 districts, and we are in the coastal inland district. And so I immediately forwarded that information to Lisa Baldinger and our Chief Tiley, because also in those grants is also workforce development. So, if we need to hire more crews. I was thinking of CIPCOR and SCAs. And then the Black Diamond event was awesome. Again, I got my first eyes on our new general manager. It was great. So it's like a homecoming event. And then on the 21st was the workshop. Well done. Capitals, Projects, and Trails. I think that was probably one of our they keep getting better. That's all I can say. Either that or I'm not remembering the previous one. And then on the 22nd, I attended the Oakland Fire Safe Council meeting. It looks like the city of Oakland's getting closer to a vegetation management plan. And then on the 24th, I attended the, I talked with Rod Gould regarding our general manager, upcoming general manager evaluation. Very nice meeting, very nice talk. Also on the 24th, I met with Jim O'Connor and Tiffany Margalisi regarding a matter about Chabot Equestrian Center and their temporary closure there due to bacterial infection amongst the horses there. And then on the 25th, the COVID-19 task force, the last meeting. Again, I just reiterate what Director Wasby said. I thought this was a great opportunity and occasion for collaboration between both our unions and management. I thought it went really well, and I give Dr. Alvarez all the credit in the world for bringing all of those parties together and being able to work out collaboratively, and hopefully there'll be more opportunities for that kind of collaboration. And then on the 25th, I attended the LMD Liaison Committee with Director Corbett. we got a great update on the Northwest Territories and the McKay Avenue developments. But I also wanted to bring up that the mayor, Marilyn Ashcroft, was very, very appreciative of the efforts of our East Bay Regional Park District Police Department in their investigation of the murder of one of their citizens, and whose body happened to be found up here at Huckleberry. And so congratulations again to Chief, to your teams. They did a great job, and it sounds like everyone from the victim's mother on up is very appreciative of how our police department handled itself. So well done. And then on the 26th was the Lake de Valier Visitor Center. Another great event. The mosquitoes. And I just amazed at the creativity and innovation, that how much you can stick in that little building. And I love the watershed. I could have stayed in there forever. I was like, I don't know how they're going to move people out of here.
The kids won't stand a chance. The adults are going to just grab them.
That was incredible.
Yep.
And then on the 26th, I met with the Juneteenth committee. I guess the subcommittee of the Black Employees Committee. And then on the 27th, I met with, participated in the media event for the tree mortality. It really is, I was glad to see our assembly member, RBK, I call her. And
quicker.
Yeah, and how supportive she is and has been. And also just to be out there in person, just to see how many trees are actually dead or dying. It's amazing. It's pretty scary out there, and I'm glad we're highlighting it, and we're actively trying to get funding, because it's pretty daunting. It's going to be a scary year, but I appreciate the event, and hopefully it goes out to a lot of people. And then I attended the Regional Parks Foundation meeting, and then that's where I got to see the full-on Kevin Damstra show there. Incredible. And then on the 28th, I attended the Fuel Break Crew graduation. We've got 5 or 6 more young firefighters, strong. They all look strong and strapping. Dennis, they put us all to shame, I think. And I gave them a little history on the Redwood Hotshots there. And then on the 29th, I spent 4 hours on Redwood Road picking up litter between Redwood Gate and Skyline Boulevard. And so I was telling my wife that that's the thing about being a park ranger, is you get to see both sides of the public, the good public and the bad public.
Okay.
So it was pretty bad, and there's still a lot more in the creek, but I've given all those hot spots to Supervisor Bridget Calvi. Okay, that completes my report.
Your beauty.
Yeah, we're all been very, very busy, and very appreciative. I just want to put a big shout out to Public Affairs for all their work in getting ready for LGBTQ month, and I thank staff for the resolution. Amazing what they did as far as turnaround and getting the flags and the pin. So whoa, pretty amazing. And I'd also like Kevin's story about the Chinese treatment out in Antioch. Perfect segue or ending to Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I would like to just adjourn, belated in memory for Memorial Day for all those who gave service to our country. And also to when I was at the graduation ceremony for the firefighters, I found out about one of our retirees, Dimitri Moltovanos, who passed away. He was a mechanic and a firefighter. And so in his memory and the memory of those who served this country, I would like to adjourn. Thank you all.
We are
Good job.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.